here's what I wanted to do first, okay? I do have some ideas. I've got some makes to share with you. I've got some techniques, tutorials, all of that. But first, let's take a look at this, the infamous muffin tin. And I say this really because depending on the kind of maker you are, right? So take it for what that is. Depending on the kind of maker you are, it's very important that you set yourself up some type of making thing for a season. So let's just say, for example, let's take away Valentine's Day real quick. Let's say you needed to make birthday cards for the year. Maybe you're one of those makers that you like to make handmade birthday cards and you want to just get them all made for the year. Set up something, it doesn't have to be a muffin tin, it could be something, set up embellishments where you can spend a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever it was, making for what your goal is. And if that was birthday cards or thank you cards, or maybe you're setting up for Easter or whatever that is, it is important to kind of go through your creative space and pull out those things that work. And that's what I wanted to start with, is just to show you that I went through my studio. I gathered things that were Valentine related. Now, some of this has long been retired, right? Old and new, but I am that maker that just because something has been retired or hasn't been available for the last 5 years or whatever, it's not that I'm not going to show it again. Too bad, so sad. You know, it's been designed, it's been out there. Some people have it, so I think that you always need to generate ideas with it. And even if you don't have a specific stencil or die or stamp, maybe you'll still get an idea of how you can incorporate what you have with what that is. All right. So of course, first thing, you know, color. You're going to see throughout this, there's just a lot of colors that I chose, reds and pinks, because, well, that's kind of Valentine's. Some people are really into purple for Valentine's. I might do a touch of purple throughout the demo, but really you have to just do colors and stuff that inspire you. So let me put some of this stuff back into where I have it for my little demo buckets. There's some distress. All right. Then we've got this little trinkety thing. So again, muffin tin filled with a lot of stuff. And some of the stuff I'll actually use on some of the makes, but just to give you an idea, so frames, I think frames are really good. Some of them, these are like Idea-ology, small adornment frames. Look at this. I love this big kind of Baroque frame. This is great for boxes. Those ones from Halloween that we transformed at Christmas time into these ornaments, those would be good, because maybe you wanted to make something for Valentine's Day that was more than just a card. Maybe it was something that you wanted to add as a decoration, right? Or on the front of a journal. Maybe you're going to do a gratitude journal and you're looking for a way. A lot of times what frames are good for is to anchor florals, especially if you like to create something where you're using dimensional florals or dies. It's a great way that you can cluster things together and house them into a frame. Then, of course, mirrored. I love these. These are long retired. These were old Idea-ology. These are mirrored hearts. I like these. We did stars and hearts. They came in all different sizes. You can alcohol ink these. I'm sure you could probably find these at the craft store somewhere. Usually they came like in weird assorted packs with other shapes, but I like that we did hearts again, long time ago. Wood slices for Christmas. I'll show you a Valentine that I did with wood slices because I love these little guys. To me, they're harder and harder to get at the craft store. The craft store seems to have much larger ones, you know, maybe they're bases or foundations, so I love it. This is my favorite SKU ever. Sadly, it has been retired. I think it retired last year from Idea-ology. It's called Typography. We tried to keep it as long. I loved it so much that I think I have maybe either 120 or 180 packs in my shed out back, because when Advantis was retiring them, I'm like, I need to stock up because I never want to run out of it. They are plastic letters. They don't have any spikes or anything, but they're kind of like a letterboard or menu board, a little thicker. But you'll see that they're really great to spell things out and to create things. So that's my favorite. And a lot of these things, even though I talk about it being retired, you can do a Google search. You might find a retailer that still has stock. I mean, it's old, but it's not super old. These are wood blocks that we did in Idea-ology. This was inspired by a vintage game. I like these because they had different letters on each side. Usually the one with the game has the same letter, so you ran out of letters very quick. But these are fun if you want to spell out a word or do a monogram or initial. Keys, love keys. Probably another one of my favorites, these adornment keys, and I'll talk about that when we get into the make, why I like this particular pack. Florals, there's a lot of different florals in Idea-ology, right? The heirloom roses, heirloom florals. You've seen us color these with alcohol inks, embossing glaze, but if you're looking for quick florals and you don't want to build them and you want something to glue onto a make, these are very lightweight. They're flat back, they're resin, they can be colored, and you can put them onto things. Then we have Bouquet. This is a very important product, and I think Paula would agree. We actually tried to source these things for years in ideology. And it seems silly because people would look at these and be like, what is the big deal about this? So Bouquet, these are paper flowers, kind of like vintage millinery flowers, right? They have a little bit of a wire on them with a stamen, okay? So let me just grab the pack. There we go. This is how they're sold. So you might see them and be like, huh, what is that? That's weird. Am I planning a wedding? No. Okay. So these are all wire wrapped. So they come with a pretty long wired stem. Let me see. Where is that? I gotta find it. Here we go. And I'll do a demo on how these are. But that's what these are. They're just long, cool flowers. You cut them up, but these are really great to use. So I'll show you a demo of how you can take these and really transform them into makes. Then, of course, anything relating to words. So I went through my word bands, word keys, story sticks, type tokens. Again, some stuff is current, some is retired. In fact, word keys, this is one of the SKUs that has been around in ideology since ideology started. What is it? 9 years ago, 10 years ago? These actually are getting retired this year, word keys. There's some new ones coming out, but I love the love key. Sparkly blingety stuff. So these little antique gems, these are part of ideology. They're great little stones that have little jump ring. You can't see, the camera needs to focus on my pork chop finger. There we go. Nice little stone. Whoop, dropped in there. And I'll talk about ribbon slides and loop pins. Then there's hearts. These are ideology adornments. I love these. These were designed and inspired by a vintage silver bracelet. You may have seen those antique charm bracelets, and I'll show you what to do with those. And then, of course, arrows. I love the adornment arrows, the big ones, the short ones. These also are being retired this year. But one of the big arrows is coming back, but these little guys that came with it, these are going away. But they're fun. You could do a lot of different things with it. So have an embellishment tray, right? Then, of course, stamps and stencils. Go through your stamps, whatever brands you have, any stencils, and really dig through and see what you have. It was kind of fun because it was like a time capsule, right? Going through Stampers Anonymous because, you know, they don't retire stuff. Look at that, CMS 82. This is how I used to design stamps, right? Just a few on there, and they used to be on this white backer before they were indexed, right? You can see old, only a couple got used.
82, wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, really long. But then as you go through, like this was one, a silhouette, great background stamp, great for solid stamping, great for embossing, you have that one. Then the blueprints. These blueprints were drawn by Mario's son, MJ III. Love the blueprint series. There's a whole different series, but the Valentine series was really good, right? Because it's got the Conversation Heart, Queen of Hearts, Cupid, 14, that also came in minis. So you can see there's even an Easter set, 4th of July. We did them for all years. Probably one of my favorites, like coloring books for adults. And the blueprints come in 2 different sizes. Usually the theme is in a large set of 4, and then there's a mini, and then they even come in mini strips, which are nice. Then, of course, go through your sentiment stamps, right? You may have stuff where you bought, this is one, simple sayings. It's just a good one because you have, you know, I love you, always forever, from the heart, with love. So there's a lot of things that you can utilize that you may not think about, right? Here's another one, Crazy Talk. This is when we did Crazy, the bird Crazy. So there's Happy Valentine's Day in that one because there are accessories that went with that stamp set to add the hearts for that. Doilies, right? Anything that is pretty or that could create a background, that's a great stamp to use. If you're not into the I love you, from the heart, Happy Valentine's Day, look at a lot of your text or other sentiments, especially if you're thinking about, you know, sending it to a friend or, you know, just a nice reminder where it's like, you know, collect beautiful moments or just love you, right? It's not, I love you, just love you. That's what you say that to a lot of friends, or just do what you love. You know, maybe you need to send that to someone that is really thinking about different life decisions right now and maybe changing careers or whatever that is. There's a lot of ways that you can share love every single day, but hopefully this Valentine's will inspire you and kind of be that catalyst to really make for the love of it. Then we have Urban Elements, one of my favorites. I love this because if you are into that very nostalgic, very romantic vibe, this is a beautiful set. It's got that little cherub there, a lot of floral pieces, some great frames, laurel leaf, little scroll, just beautiful work. This is good not only for Valentine's Day, but it creates some beautiful shabby chic as well. So Urban Elements, just a cool set. And then if you're not into the old pretty, right? And you're going to see kind of my take on Valentine, which is very steampunk Valentines. But this is a great set for steampunk Valentines, right? This is Mini Glitch. Why? X and O. Right there. There is an X and an O that you can create a cool steampunk Valentine with mini glitch. So if you're into that, or you're looking to make more of a masculine or a steampunk kind of vibe Valentine, this is a great stamp set to do it, because, you know, if you have the set, you may not have even seen that to really be like, hey, that's it. It's kind of a glitch. That's it. All right. Then for stencils, well, they could be anything. And I have designed quite a bit. We're going to use the heart stencil today, but there's numbers. Numbers are always great, right? If you want to do the 14th, there's some Valentine words that I've done. This is just a scribbly heart. This is a great one to do a print with, or a doily. That's also a great one for not only texture paste, but spraying through. This is just scribbles. A lot of people think it looks like roses. I would have to agree, especially for Valentine's. You could ink this and actually print with it. If you print with this stencil, that's where you're going to get the design. If you stencil through it, you're going to get kind of the inside. But these scribbles look like roses. That's a good one. And then, of course, these guys, right? Anything, if you're just looking for floral backgrounds to add, florals are also a great thing for Valentine's Day. Just going through your stash. Like I said, a lot of this stuff is old stuff, right? So even in the world of like dies and embossing folders, there's quite a bit. Sure, there's some heart dies. I'm gonna use this one of my favorites. It's the faceted heart. It actually creates a dimensional heart. This one I designed after my heart surgery. I just love Heartbeat. It's a very special die for me, but I love this for Valentine's Day. We talked about falling hearts when we did alcohol inks last week. Geo shapes, there's a heart on that one. A lot of florals, right? So you can take any of your brushstroke florals or colorized florals if you want to do something that's maybe not to do with hearts, and instead you want stuff where it is just more florally. You can go through and look at all of your detailed things, right? These are really classic. I love these dies. These are doily because see how imperfect they were? They were really designed by vintage, actual, I think crocheted or tatted doilies. There's that wonderful, I love this one, that crochet. Right? These are border dies, or these. So any of these you can cut out of paper and add to it. It could be used as a paper element on a card, but it could also be used for collage. Maybe you're going to do gesso over the top of it, and you're going to do paint or stains, but you want something that is a little bit, because if you try to use paper doilies in mixed media, you'll know it's a challenge because they want to dissolve. They're pretty thin. So that's the nice thing about using paper stuff. Again, one of my favorites, Countdown, because numbers for Valentine's. Varsity, that's the newest alphanumeric that we did. Great if you want to create kind of that old school vibe of XO, or love, or I love alphabet dies. You can see that the majority of these, this whole bundle right here, are all of the different fonts. Just, it's one of my favorite things to design. It's probably the most short-lived of all of the Sizzix because they get retired really quick. But I love having the ability to get alphabets. Some of them, if they have a counter on the front, see that little countdown right there? That means there's going to be multiple letters in there, so you could actually spell out words and die cut the negative using sticky grid. If it doesn't have that counter, it's usually just one of each that you see on the package, but all different sizes, right? Look at this one. Look at that tiny type. We're talking 3/8 of an inch and a 1/4 inch. A 1/4 inch. Get out a ruler and see that. Like tiny, tiny type. Then there's that drop shadow and upper and lower, plus the numbers. I like that tall, skinny. There's just so many cool things when it comes to fonts, especially if you're looking to spell out words. Even if you wanted to go like that whole hand cut vibe, I love this to cut out felt, right? Or flocked paper, or any kind of cardstock, because it really gives it a hand cut look. So depending on what you're going for, there's alphabets to pretty much fit any type of make. And these are really important year round, right? Because you don't need to find that special Valentine sentiment die or Easter or whatever it is that you want to do if you have an alphabet, right? Then of course, embossing, we have of course the impresslet favorite. All the impresslets have been retired from Sizzix, so if you don't see them available, that they're not coming back. They were all retired. But this Lucky Love was a favorite because not only does it have that great heart, but it also has that clover. Again, another frame that you can emboss and utilize this for adding florals. And this was one of my favorites too. If you guys remember the demo a while back, I think I have my tin right here. Yep, there we go. My tin of scraps, right? I told you, remember about just making things when you feel like, you don't feel like actually creating a specific finish make, just get out your stuff. So this is one that we did. Embossing glaze, there's that Lucky Love. Cool, you could use that. I'll probably keep that out, use that for some type of Valentine. Right, if you're looking for, you know, maybe St. Patrick's Day, nice, look at that, clover, great embellishment that you can use for that. But all of these little things, there's that frame. So it is fun when you sit there. I love to do things like this, create backgrounds, or just sit there with my die cuts and die cut things, right? Even alcohol paper. when I'm just in that creative rut. We all get in creative ruts. So even if that just means taking your backgrounds and cutting them up, or sitting down and coloring some things, you have no use for it, that's the best time to just give a creative play, because you don't care really what it looks like. You're doing it for the fun of it. And then you have a whole tin of goodness to add to your elements, right? And I love the distress storage tins for that. Talk about that quite a bit. Then of course 3Ds. You'll see some other 3Ds, but things like flourishes or typewriter, right? You might do this as a background for a Valentine, and you have a sentiment like, you know, just my type. You know, maybe you love to do that whole play on words. So that's a cool background, but you wouldn't look at that and go, ooh, Valentine's, but it can be, right? So that's the first thing that I wanted to point out, is this isn't really about a new Valentine release, because there is nothing new in this. It's about looking at what you have and spinning it for Valentine's. It's easy, easy to do, okay? Let me take some of this. I'm just gonna try to shuffle this. All right, if you can take that stuff, I just need to create some room. Thanks. I might need some of that back, but you never know. You never know. Thank you. Okay, so let's get into just talking. I'll probably put this over here. Let's just get into talking about stuff and what we can create. So first one, and I saw some people talk about this before the live started. Mario was talking about people chatting about this one. I think this was last year's, what I mentioned. Maybe I did this on the 13th. There is a tutorial, a live, where we make this from start to finish. I'll touch base on this technique because I included a similar technique in a card, because I wanted to show you that this technique is not just about this puffy heart, but I do show this, and I'll put the link on my blog after this live if I do a follow-up blog on Valentine's Day and share this. But you can just type, I think it's just called Steampunk. So if you just go to timholtz.com and type Steampunk in the search, you'll see this tutorial. It is cool because this is done out of a styrofoam heart, metal foil. There's some gears, there's that arrow we wired on. This is just a vignette. And of course it does have some tiny lights in the back so you can light it up in the back. Isn't that cool? Nice little night light. See, just really, really simple. And I think most of this is done with like foam tape, but I'll share this, kind of give you a quick recap, but a full tutorial for how to do this from start to finish. Very, very simple to do and cool to do. I love the effect of it. Just love to have a light, right? Think about that too. Anytime you find objects, right, even if they're dimensional, whether it's this happens to be a styrofoam heart, but maybe you're doing something else, it's very cool just to swirl some tiny lights in the back and then light it up, especially if you're doing a vignette, because it just adds something kind of cool. But then I was playing around with all different things. So we'll talk about cards. And as I said, when it comes to Valentine's, you can do a lot of different things, right? So remember this one? This was the alcohol pearls that we did last week in the live, and I just went in and talked about cutting this out and said, oh, you can save that positive and negative to turn into a card. There you go. There's no standard size for cards, and I know people get really caught up on, you know, A2 or slimline or 4x or whatever it is. I just say I start with the background and then just start matting the paper, and you get what you get. The card ends up the size that it ends up, okay? But what I decided to do is just put this on some distressed wood grain cardstock. That's what's in the back. I didn't even ink it. Shocking, right? Because I love the colors of this, and I didn't want to do anything else to the rest of the papers to take away from this background. I did take out those cutouts and just added a little bit of foam tape, popped those up, kind of offset them just to do that. But because you were going to see through the hearts, I wanted to give some texture, and I thought, wow, white wood grain, pretty cool. And then matted it with black. I always use black alcohol ink cardstock because it is very opaque, very thick, and almost kind of suede-y. Yeah, I like that. It's a very clean looking card, but that didn't last. I mean, that's the other thing. Some people get really hung up on like style because, you know, everything needs to be matchy-matchy. If that's you and that's your jam, you do you. If you can take an idea and you can use it 100 times, do it. But don't be afraid the next time that if you see something and it sparks a different thought, that you don't just jump to it, which was this one. Because yes, I did white wood grain, but then I'm like, ooh, but I do love this wood grain, right? And I'll show you how to do this today in the demo as well. One of my favorite techniques is just creating wood grain with the wood grain cardstock. If you don't have wood grain cardstock, you can use the 3D lumber folders that I did with Sizzix, the large or the mini. But here's just showing a wood slice, right? So those wood slices that we do for Christmas, and again, if you are all savvy, you could use your alphanumeric. You can type something on the computer, maybe, you know, would you be mine, right? Again, play on words. But I just like the idea of having something that was just more organic. So I used one of the idea-ology heart adornments, added a little color. We'll talk about how you add the color. they're those keys. Now, these keys, I think some people don't realize these key adornments. Let me see. I tried to bring in packages, and I say I, but that's really Mario because he helped me out, like bringing in packages of stuff. So thank you, Mario, for doing that. But this is that set, and sometimes you'd see it and you don't really understand the true scale of these. What I like about this set is you get some big keys for big projects, and you get these tiny little keys. And these tiny little keys, well, they're tiny, but they're perfect. You just glue it on with some collage medium. I used a little tack nail to nail into the wood, and then I stuck that on with foam square. These little guys, these are called hardware heads. Tiny little hardware. They're flat backed, so they're gluers, right? They're not brads. You don't have to worry about sticking them through anything. You can just glue them on, but it gave it just more of a little industrial feel, right? Metal to metal to metal. I love the combination of metal and wood, right? Isn't that nice? And then because I didn't have the stamp that was the perfect scale, that's the other thing, right? Scale is important in what you do, right? You stamp a big old honking word, it's going to overpower the cuteness of these tiny little elements. So what did I do? Well, go into small talk, and maybe it's going to be small talk, or maybe it's going to be snarky, depending on who you're sending it to. But these sticker books I just use them quite a bit because they are uncoated stickers. So unlike regular stickers that have that gloss over the top, these have no coating on them. So these are inkable. You can use your inks, you can do watercolor, you can do pencils, you can do markers, anything translucent, the type is going to show through. Half the book is white, the other half is black. Same assortment of words. And the nice thing about small talk, well, there's all sorts of different chattery things. So I love this, love with all your heart. Because it's just printed on a white core, I just took an emery board. You can use sandpaper, a little nail file, and just scuff the edges just to frame that. So again, didn't have to do any inking. Could you glue this if this was driving you crazy? Yes, but you know me. I like the whole shakety shake, a little movement a little bit. But cool, completely different look to what that was, but still Woodgrain, inspired Woodgrain, and then so on and so forth. Then we have Heartbeat. Now, if you follow Sharon did some great shares of some cards she did back when we had this die, and she did some beautiful rainbow. But what I love about this set, Mario, could you grab me that die set, please? A Heartbeat in there. It has a lot of different components, but it creates like a positive and a negative. It should have been kind of in the front with the hearts. No? Yeah, oh, he's flipping through all that like crazy. He's filing like you just see him flipping his fingers right in the back. Perfect. Thanks. You're welcome. That's the die. Okay. So the thing about this die is it's got a heart with this little beat inside. Now there is no cut blade on either side. So this is going to be suspended like this, right? So when you cut this out of paper, that stays suspended, but it leaves you with a cool negative piece. That's the dropout. And you can simply use the negative. Now it wasn't from the same thing because I've cut this out a lot of different things. This is one of the alcohol pearl backgrounds I did last week. There's the negative. And you just have to space it by eye visually, right? But then it still gives you a cool look for positive and negative. And then of course these two are just sentiments. One is just love in there and one is the heart. But the point is that you can still create Valentines that are a bit on the grungy side if you like. You can use your alcohol ink backgrounds. Maybe they're your favorites. Maybe they're the ones that you just don't like. To create this little explosion of color, here's a little trick that I do, I guess. I don't want to say trick. I don't know. It's never really trick. It's just here's what I do. When I cut out a heart, this die, from my other piece of alcohol ink. So remember, this was Yupo. So I would essentially have that negative piece with that little ziggity zag in there. When I was taking it out, I ripped this in the Yupo. I didn't rip it really. I stretched it, I should say, because Yupo is plastic. So when I pulled the die out, I didn't take the time to pick through it. And so I ruined it, right? I ruined the actual piece that I was going for. And I'm like, oh, well, get over yourself. Like, it didn't work. So I snipped that off, and essentially I had a heart frame. I was like, okay, that's cool. I could use it, but it wasn't really what I was going for, but it gave me the idea. Because Yupo is plastic, it's synthetic, it is also great for stenciling, okay? So I took that heart, laid it on a piece of white cardstock, took my distress ink and blending tool and inked inside that heart. So I made a brown heart on this white watercolor paper, just inked it, took it off, and then I just took my spray bottle right from above. I didn't angle it, I didn't stand it up, I just blasted it with some water. And because distress is reactive, it wicked out from the heart. So it just gave the illusion, just that effect where the color is coming out from that shape, and it kind of follows the whole shape of it. Instead of just going across the middle and creating that. So think about that often if you have some leftover negative pieces from a die. Even if it wasn't Yupo and maybe you were going to throw it away, use that as kind of a stencil, spray it, let it do its thing, dry it, and then put your die cut shape because you get a very cool organic-y inked background around it. And then of course there was the brown that was inside. And then I just used some foam squares to pop it up. But that's really how I isolated that distress ink, but also created that movement to follow the shape, right? So you got to just do it. You got to do what you do. And then I just took some thread. There you go. Just adding a little embellishment here. Same idea. This is Kraftstock. I'll talk about this because this effect is so easy, this red cardstock, because you would think it's red ink. It's just paper. But I took that technique that we did here, right? Did it on a card, and I'll show you this technique as well. But just to prove that if you have an idea and you're like, I am not into it, or I can't find styrofoam hearts, or I don't want to do vignettes, but I like it, you can still incorporate the idea in a card, right? It's the same idea. So keep that mind open to all of that. Then took the arrow, took that same little charm, but instead of tying it with string, I just used a little wire. Just says Just One Life, one of my favorites. Right? Added it to that adornment arrow, and again, foam tape. And then these guys, these are called machine heads. So these are kind of like hardware heads, but they're much bigger. These are also going away. There's a lot of stuff going away the end of this year, or not the end of this year, the beginning of this year, the end of last year. They're going away. But sometimes scale, because if I try to put these little hardware heads on this card, ooh, they'd be tiny. So because I wanted that whole industrial look, that's where you choose your embellishments. And you may not think that all those gears and screw heads and keys and all that would work for Valentine's, but if this is your jam and you like this steampunk vibe, it certainly can be, okay? So, but if you don't like the grunginess, you can still achieve this on a completely different rainbow side. This wood grain could be colorful. This could be bright. This could stay white. The wood grain could be gray if you wanted it a little clean and simple. If you wanted to do this, maybe instead of doing black, which we're going to do black paint on this, maybe you do white and you give this a whole different shabby chic, because a lot of times at computer rooms, right, it's that whole clean room environment. It's very white and stark. So metallic and white looks just as good as grunge. Or this, maybe you wanted to do something. Sharon did some beautiful rainbow hearts. So maybe when you're inking that heart, right, the negative, instead of brown like I did, maybe you ink it in a rainbow, and then when you spray it, you're going to get this rainbow explosion to match that rainbow heart. See what I mean? Color choice. The idea is the idea. It's just about taking those ideas and implementing them into what you like to do, right? Then, as I mentioned, I am a fan of candy. I love candy. So I wanted to do stuff that has to do with, well, candy. Now, conversation hearts, I would have to say not my favorite candy, right? But I still like them. Mario loves them. He loves them so much. So Mario made these. He did a really good job. Just to create some conversation hearts. If you have a die, which is one of the cool dies, let me just grab this. Right, we'll move these out of the way. There we go. Get this out of the way. Get this out of the way. Cool. Super simple. So these could be a lot of things. They could go into a bowl if you want them to go into a bowl. Yes, Mario did glitter. He did all of these. But you could also use this. That's right. You can also use this as an embellishment. Maybe you are looking for quick card embellishments, or maybe you like to bake, or maybe you're going to buy some other candies and tie it up in a cello bag and you're looking for a really quick handmade embellishments. These couldn't be easier, all right? Taking a steel rule die, one of my favorites, right? Look how old this is. This is still that whole, that's when we did them in brown, now black. But this is heartfelt. It's just a steel rule die, so different than a thin die. It's got blade in it, but this would allow you to cut chipboard. All right, so we're talking, you know, pretty thick chipboard. You could do it out of paper. You just have to stack that many more. But look at all these cool shapes and sizes you get at a chipboard. So this is taking chipboard shapes, or maybe if you don't have this die, you don't have chipboard, you can find wood hearts, often at the dollar store or the craft store. You could even do foam hearts, fun foam hearts, and you could do the same thing because what we're using would work on foam, wood, paper. Okay, so to make the hearts simple, just had them cut 3, glue them together with collage medium. So you just stack them up. Don't worry about your seams because you can fill it in with glue and glitter. Okay, so these are all just stuck down. Glue of choice, right? There you go. Collage medium. Why do I like collage medium? Well, it dries quick, so it has a drying time of now. It doesn't have a lot of moisture, so when you're trying to stack things, you don't get the potato chip lasagna effect, you know, when you try to glue stuff and it loves to curl. That's what I like about this. When you put them together, they're pretty much dry and you can go on to the next thing, and you can also use it as your glue for the glitter. So let's talk about glitter, because yeah, I like some glitter. Mario got his sparkle on. But I talked about this at Christmas, and some people are like, yeah, okay, but really, I don't know if I'd ever use it. And I said, if you do it, you'll be surprised how often you can use it throughout the year. Remember that. Remember that. So when we talked about coloring our sparkly things, right? Coloring our glitters. So we have an entire tin of all these different colors of glitter, right? A whole rainbow, and you can make as many as you want as far as glitter. Or maybe mica flakes are your jam, right? You can go in and color all these beautiful, so maybe you want just wonderful pink mica flakes. That's the beauty of tinting these things, because if you sit and just do this, you have it at the ready. If you have to do this for each time you're making, and you don't have a little, whether you're doing the storage tin or not, if you don't have this stuff, you're not going to do it, because you're like, I don't want to get the stuff out and make the stuff and wait for it to dry and use it. It's much nicer, in my opinion, to be able to tint the colors that you want than try to find these colors of glitter, because I don't know if you would be successful in that, because most glitters on the market are mylar, which means they are going to be opaque. Distress glitter is what we use it with. This is a translucent glitter. So it's completely clear. It doesn't have any iridescence, which means whatever we put it on, even if we tint it, we're still going to see through it. So just a real quick refresher on creating this. So the colors, like we did, you know, glitters that kind of work for conversation hearts, right? We did that light pink, there's a light yellow, there's a light orange, there's a light green. I love this minty pistachio color. There's also light blues or purples, whatever your jam is. Maybe you're not doing conversation hearts, but here's how easy it is to do. Okay, just move this off to the side. Actually, let me get my media mat. I'm starting to get my ink on, man. So let's do that. Let's switch into kind of demo mode. Bring this out. Okay, there we go. Ah, happiness. Okay, here we go. So when it comes to painting, the colors of paint, and I'm going to use the colors of paint in another demo as well, but just because I don't really get into colors, but just go through your paints and pick out colors that you like, right? Pick out colors that are going to work. The way I always choose to see what colors of paint are going to work with my project, yeah, sometimes I'll look at the label, but I'm going to be honest, I'll normally just open the cap and see how the crusty paint dried, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's my color. You know, because obviously paint dries a little different, so that's kind of my thing. But you're going to choose whatever colors. After these are glued, you're going to base coat them with paint. We want paint over ink. Now, if you don't have that, if you have Distress Oxide, Oxide would work as well, because Distress Oxides are pigment. The problem with that is we have to paint on some glue. So if you use ink, if you use Oxide, when we go to paint the glue to glue the glitter on, that ink is going to transfer to your glue brush. Maybe that's going to bother you, maybe it isn't. You'd have to clean your brush over and over again. So that's really why we went with paint, because paint is waterproof. So once these are painted, when we add the glue, it's not going to re-wet anything and it's not going to get into the glitter. So my advice would be paint, but I know if I don't say it, then people will say, oh, but could we use ink? Could we do this? That's a challenge, that if you use ink, it's going to re-wet with your glue. So to make our colorful glitter, take whatever, a cup. I'm going to get a little paper towel just so maybe you can see under there. And just see what color you want to make. I talked about this color, we'll do pistachio. But alcohol inks are what we're going to use to tint the glitter. And again, I've talked about this for pretty much every season. Usually we go pretty intense, right? If we're doing reds or greens or Halloween, we want purple or orange. But look at your light colors. If you don't have light colors of alcohol ink, you can play around with using your alcohol ink and adding a little bit of either blending solution or isopropyl to thin out the color, but it's only going to be a translucent version of whatever color you're using. Meaning if you use a green, say a grass green, it's never going to look pistachio. It's only going to be a light version of grass green, which still might be okay. But that's why it is nice to have some of these more pastel colors, pretty simple. Okay, we're going to take some distress glitter. I'll just do a little bit, but normally I would just put enough to kind of cover the bottom. Depends on how much you want to make. If you have the storage jars, right, these guys, these are the empty storage jars from Ranger. They're distress storage jars. I just like them because I use them for a lot of different things. But I'll usually fill one up maybe halfway with clear glitter and then dump that in as my measuring. I would also prefer a larger cup. I like to mix in a bigger cup, but for the sake of the demo, we're just using a little portion cup. Get yourself a mixing stick. Couldn't be easier. Take some alcohol ink, squirt some in. How much? I don't know. Just put a few drops to start. You can always add more, okay? But there's no takesies backsies, because what you'd have to do to get it lighter is just add more glitter, and then before you know it, you have more than you need. And then you're just going to stir it, and it's going to get clumpy. Talk about that all the time, but just keep stirring. Just keep stirring, just keep stirring. And you want to mix those clumps up, because all that is that's just solvent-based ink that has not evaporated yet. And these inks dry very quick, usually about 10 seconds. So that's going to start to evaporate. And as it evaporates, you can see it starting to coat that glitter. Now the glitter at this point kind of looks like wet sand, right? Because it does still have some moisture in it. But as long as it doesn't have any clumps, right? That's what I'm kind of, you'll hear it kind of grinding against the side. So I'm taking the clear that goes on the outside, pushing it here. Once it doesn't have any clumps, and I happen to like that color, I don't need to go any more than that. I like to take a paper towel, dump that out, and let it dry, right? It's just going to dry much quicker. It may only take a minute or two to dry now because you're spread out, versus leaving it in the cup, because it will dry, but then you have to kind of break it up because the resin and the ink's going to want to make it stick together. But once it's dry, you can put it back in a cup, a container, a bowl, a dish, whatever, and your glitter, I'll show you that color, your glitter will always be just dry like that. It won't be clumpy ever. It stays just like glitter. And now you have colors that will work with whatever it is that you want to work with. And even though we're using alcohol ink, let me just move this out so I don't spill it anywhere. Thanks, Mario. Even though we're using alcohol ink, but we use distress paint, you can find colors that are pretty comparable, right? So it's not like, oh, I need a matchy-matchy. Just comparable. Because the reason is, once you glitter these, it's going to be translucent. Now, could you say, well, hello, Captain Obvious. I'll just use clear glitter, and clear glitter is going to show the paint. No, clear glitter is going to be clear glitter on top of paint. There's a difference, and that's okay. Clear glitter would look more sugared, right? Or icy, because clear glitter, when you see it compacted, appears white, right? Like in this jar, you can't see my hand underneath it, can you? No, you can't. Even though it's clear, when you put enough on it, it becomes white. So that is why I like to tint the glitter if I plan on glittering something to show a color. All right, it's really nice. So what can you use? Well, I like to use collage medium. You can also use glossy accents. You can use any type of liquid glue. Then you're just going to brush it onto your painted surface. You're going to take your glitter, shake it on, tap it off, and put as many layers as you want. But that's simple, easy. And like I said, great for a decor, great for the front of a card. If you're going to use it on a card, you don't have to glitter the back, obviously, because you're going to stick it down. But a fun way that you can add embellishments, and very easy, very affordable, and it could be whatever palette you want it to be, right? If you want these colors more intense, or you want these to be a little grungy, you know, you could also go in with your distress ink and your blending tool now and ink the edges. And this is inkable, because this is an actual inkable glitter, not only with alcohol ink, but also distress, where you can distress the edges. Just fun things. And again, that's just that idea that when you think about it, you may have seen it at a different time of year, a holiday, and sometimes during Halloween, Christmas. We see these ideas, we connect to those ideas, but then we forget to use those ideas any other time of the year other than that. And then when Christmas rolls around again, you're like, ooh, let's color some glitter. But yes, you could have had it the whole time. All right. Another thing to color, we'll talk about our flowers, right? We talked about the bouquet. I love these guys. Well, you could use ink pads. Ink pads are a way, so you can use ink or oxide. But if you have a sprayable colorant is the easiest way to color something that is porous, especially something that is going to be dimensional. Now, these come in clusters, as I mentioned, so when you get them, you can untwist them, unwind them, and you get 5 bunches. That's what we call a bunch. But each bunch is also its own cluster, so you can unwind this as well if you needed a long wire. I just go in with my scissors and just cut these, right, because I think that that's going to be plenty. Sometimes I'll use the whole thing, sometimes I'll just use one. And you've seen the makers use these. Everything from Halloween, right? We've seen Emma, Tammy B use like dead flowers. We've seen stuff that at Christmas time, some wintry things. I know Tammy made some winter urns. Stacy, Paula, they've made like pretty shabby looks. We've seen them in books because they are made out of paper. So depending on how many you want to use, they can also go flat into even a junk journal, right? Pretty simple. But I wanted to share how easy it is to color it, because what I love is taking something where you get it in a package and it doesn't look exciting. What I love about ideology. It's taking the ordinary and turning it into the extraordinary. Because how cute would it be just to have all these different colors of flowers? Really simple. This is just taking these, cutting this off. Now this could be a make, but this was really more just to show you colors during the demo. But this is just taking those, cutting that off, spraying it, letting them dry, and then putting them into a cork vial. Now the cork vial, we got rid of the cork and just hot glued it onto a ruler. But even that could be cute in a studio, right? Hang it up in a creative space. Maybe you have something small, but it just shows how beautiful these color with spray ink. Now the edges, you can see they're kind of a little brown, a little inky, because I did take a blending tool. Mario sprayed these too. He did good. He was like the glitter, the sprayer. I'm like, here, spray these. He's like, got it. Did a good job.
That was fun.
It's really fun. So I'll show you how easy it is, because sometimes people get intimidated when they look at stuff and they're like, oh gosh, you know, that's got to be harder than it is. Nope, super simple. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut right there, right? Because I like to keep this. If you get rid of this paper wrap, it's going to make each of these individual flowers. Maybe that's what you want. So remember, if you want these to be a little bit longer, you can take this paper off and do that. The other thing to remember is that these are paper. These are not made out of fabric. So if you hose them down with ink, they will start to dissolve. Now, not right away. That's why I want to show you how to ink them. But yeah, we'll leave that here because that looks really cute. Okay. So let's just do a splat box just so I don't have to clean up the ink right away. But I would normally just work right on the craft mat, but just because I want to show you some other things. So these flowers, because they are paper, great for cards because, again, you could just use one. Has that great little stamen in there. Let's do a color. Maybe we want to do the speckled egg. That'll be good. So you can spray directly on that with ink, okay? And in doing so, it's going to become that color. So whatever the color of ink is, if you spray it directly on that paper flower, it's going to absorb in an instant. What I like to do to create kind of that more vintage mottled look where they're not all the perfect colors, see how the intensity is different in those flowers, is instead of just spraying the ink directly on, just mist it with a little water first. And when I say a little bit, it just means like, there we go, 1, 2, just a quick little spray of water. Then we can go in with our color and move that around. Now, if you're on your craft mat, I might as well just do it legit, right, Mario? Just the way I showed you. Yeah, okay. All right. The reason I do the craft mat, I'll show you why. Because if you sprayed your ink here, just one spray, so that was one spray, if you miss the flower, right, because it's only going to hit part of it, now you can just go into all of this ink and just use your fingers. If you don't want to get ink on your fingers, put some gloves on, but really this is just water-based. It'll wash off. But this allows me to just use up all of that ink that's there, move it around. If I want this color to blend even more, I can add a little bit more water. And you'll see that those flowers just start absorbing the color. You could always go back and add more. That's the joy of this. If you don't have sprays, you can smush your ink pads down, right? You could spray water on that and you could do that. You could do it with oxides, any kind of fluid, but it's much better if you have something fluid because the fluid part is what's going to absorb into the flowers. So this could be any kind of medium. You could do watercolor on there, anything. If you just try to do it dry with an ink blender or blending brush, it's going to be really hard to get those flowers to soak up the color, all right? And then once you're happy with it, which I'm going to probably mix a little color in there because we already have those other ones. So I'm going to take a little shabby shutters, right? Because maybe I want some like greenish, bluish flowers. Once you're happy with them, set them aside to dry. You can also dry them with a heat tool. They're completely heat stable because they're made out of paper. So it's not like something is going to dissolve or anything. So that's the beauty of Bouquet. We've had them for quite a while, but it's It's really nice if you wanted to add little flowers to something, or again, make a great little display piece because of paper flowers. But this is something that I would sit down, get that pack of Bouquet, get out your inks, get out your watercolors, get out your sprays, and just ink all the flowers, right? Make a whole rainbow collection of flowers so they're done. Then you can put them in a container, put them in a tin, put them in something, and then when you need flowers for a make, they're ready. This is not about saying, okay, I need a card, I need a flower, I need to get that out, I need to get out the ink, because that is going to be the problem of not doing it, because you think, I don't have time to do it. And that's really, we all struggle with that. I say that all the time. I'd really like to do that. I don't have time for that. So we're just going to move on. So that's the thing about Bouquet. A great SKU. I'll be honest, we try to save this every year. I would say if I didn't win the battle, these probably would have been discontinued at least 3 years ago, at least. Yeah. But every year I fight for them, like, no, they just don't get them, but someday they'll get them, and when they do, they'll buy and they'll use, and because there's just nothing else out there. We look on Etsy all the time for vintage flowers, and they're so expensive, and you have to buy them in a color. Well, then you have to buy a bazillion different colors to get it. So I love the idea of inking those. So
your ruler make is loved.
It's all about that, right? That's a very simple thing to do. It could be a short ruler. It could be really anything, but a great thing. And yeah, if this was going to be a make, would I put maybe, some little sand or some glass beads? Yeah, you can totally jazz it up. Tie a little jute around here, hang a charm. There's a lot of ways you can dress it up, but this was just a way of showing you the colors without holding it in my hand. Presentation is everything, right? So here's another thing. Velvet trims. Love these. So velvet trims, these come in warm, cool, and neutral in Idea-ology. There are 7 trims. You get a yard of each in the pack. It is beautiful, kind of crushed velvet. Great vintagey colors. Perfect for Valentine's Day. Perfect to add to a lot of different makes, a lot of different elements. Let's say we wanted to take pink. Yeah, I'm taking pink. That's going to happen. I know some people are like, why are you doing that? Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of that trim. Let's just say we were going to put it on a card. You could tie it on a card. Paula has a great bow trick that she did over Christmas to make the most adorable bow out of the velvet trim. But I love how it has that finished edge. Now you could ink this. You can make it shabby if you want. But you can go on to, I think I got mine on Etsy. That's where I got them. But you can try Amazon. These are little ribbon slides. You might find them in the wedding aisle of a craft store. These are 15 millimeter. That's the magic size. So 15 millimeter for those that will ask. This is a great little kind of faux rhinestone. Now this could be alcohol ink. So if you want vintage, mushroom is your jam. You can drip some mushroom on there. But it's really nice because you can take that and you can take this velvet trim. I just need to get a little closer to my face. I'm going to go up from the back, go down into that. And look at that little side. Just adds a little blingity bling to your make. Now, not part of Idea-ology, not going to be part of Idea-ology, not adding them to the line. It's a very common element because really it's often used for weddings and florals. But what a great way to dress up your ribbon, right? A 15 millimeter ribbon slide. Sometimes they call them a slide, sometimes it's called a buckle. They come in different shapes too. You can get them in squares and ovals and hearts. It's really about just that opening that the ribbon can fit through, because if it's too small, you might get a little pucker in the ribbon, which is okay. If it's too big, well then that won't stay where you have it. It'll just move. But great if you're going to do a journal or add an element to a card. Just thinking about, okay, what do I do with these trims? Do I always have to tie a bow? Do I have to wrap it around something? No, maybe it's just going to be a card. Probably not on this one, but that's just what you wanted to add to your card, right? Those can get tucked in the back and glued. Simple. A simple way to really jazz this. And you're buying them, I think, when you buy them in a bag, you're getting like 25 in a bag for nothing. So that's the whole idea with using those. Little ideas for everything, right? Little bling. If you're looking to alter metal, right? That's another cool thing. I love the ability to take metal embellishments, and I've talked about this quite a bit, whether it's going to be words, right? Story sticks or the word bands. Maybe it's even going to be these. I love these heart charms. It's what I talked about, these heart adornments, because they have so much detail. Anything that's going to have detail, whether it's going to be an innie or an outie. Innie meaning the words are going to be debossed, right? That's an innie, so your color is going to go in it. Or an outie, where your detail is, come on, focus, there you go, on the outside, raised up, an innie or outie. Either way, you can take the innie or the outie and you can use distress crayons. Now, again, you can see my palette, kind of creamy, dreamy Valentines. Let's take some of these adornments over here, these heart adornments. Quite beautiful, aren't they? But what if we took these adornments that just look beautiful in silver? Could we alcohol ink them? Yes, we have the technology. But crayon gives it a whole different look, right? Crayon gives it a beautiful, shabby finish. Awesome. I love it. Maybe you want them shiny. So if you want them like a shiny, vivid metal, then that would be like an alcohol ink marker. Some people even use Sharpies or alcohol inks. But if you like the shabby chic, a lot of times, like when I first started making, the only way that I knew to antique metal like this was acrylic paint, right? You painted it, you waited for that perfect magic time of it being dry but not too dry, wet but not too wet, and then you'd rub it off and you'd hope for the best. Distress crayon, it's done. It's foolproof. And look at how we can tint all of that little detail, right? Create that beautiful rainbow vibe. I just, again, put it on a little book because, well, presentation is everything versus holding them in my pork chop hand. But very cool. So I'll show you how easy it is to alter anything metal with crayons. And it could be any of that. So let's even take, we'll take a word band. We'll even take that and we'll take these, okay? So all you would do is take your charm, okay? So these guys, you can see, have that great detail flat on the back. So they're gluers. You can glue them. Hangers, you can hang them, or you can stick a nail in them, right? Same thing. You could do any color and any amount of vintage that you're going for. So for example, on this one, let's say we wanted to go a little pink. Now I'm using Tattered Rose, but you could use whatever color crayon you wanted to use. And what you're going to do is really color down onto that metal. And when I say color down, it means like I'm not coloring over it. I'm pushing the crayon down into it. You see that? Because it's almost like, think of this as being a cheese grater for your crayon, right? We want to get some of that crayon into the groove, but I don't need to color it solid. That's going to be enough to start. Then take your fingers and you're just going to start working that color in, because the crayons, they are water reactive, but they're also creamy, so they will allow that kind of blendability factor with your fingers. If you have trouble using your fingers, maybe something this detailed is challenging, you could go in with a brush, just a dry brush, a dry paint brush, a stiff stencil brush, and you could work that color in. But that's what you want to do. You want to get that color moved into those areas. Now, the other thing to note and why I like crayon is crayons are not permanent, okay? Meaning, if you did this with acrylic paint and that paint dried and you didn't like it, too bad, so sad. You're going to have to go in with steel wool or something to get it out. This, even though it dries, these are dry, if you touch them, nothing's going to happen because these crayons actually dry, but they are water reactive, meaning if I get them wet, the color would start to run. But I don't plan on dancing in the rain with these, and I say never lick your art, so don't worry about sealing them either. They're going to be perfect for all of your makes that you're going to do. But once that color's in there, then just take a clean finger, right? Not the ones that you work that color in, just a clean finger, or it could be a towel, or it could be your shirt, it could be whatever, you know, some people wear art clothes, and you're just going to gently buff the top of that off because we want to get some of that silver to shine through, right? Because the crayon will dull all of the metal. So you just kind of, I mean, like I told you, I have pork chop hands. See, it's nice to have little pudgy hands because they're great work tools. So find the little pudgy part of your hand and just use that, because that's simply going to, look at that, just adds a little sheen, a little shine to the top of that. And it's done, finished. Put it on a make. If you didn't like it, put it in water, let it sit in water for, I don't know, maybe a minute or so, and then you'll still have to go in and clean it off. It won't just run off. That's what people always freak out about crayons. They're like, oh, the color's just going to go run away. It won't. You still have to clean it. It's just nice that you have the ability to really add whole detail. Look at this one. Yeah, you know, salvage patina, right? Because that's just like the perfect patina. It's an interesting crayon because you'd expect it to be a little bit more green because of the cap, but that's plastic. You know, they do their best to match, but yeah, look at that. Instant patina. Love it. Okay. See that little bit of color coming off? Because that's what we want to do. We want to take that off of the high points and then done. Now, clean your fingers. Simple. Just some water and paper towel. Crayons are water reactive, so let me find my sprayer. So if you have a baby wipe or you can just use a paper towel. But that's how you can clean off your fingers, especially if you're doing different colors. Now, let's say we want to do something with words. If you want the words to really stand out, you'll notice, like, let's see. Well, we did it on this one for sure. Because it does have the innie, right? That innie part. White. Picket fence is really good because it just adds that punch. See, look on this card too. I'll show you the difference. So this, Just One Life, nothing on it. You can still see it, but the light has to hit it just right. Like, it doesn't show up as well on camera, but like in person, the light hits it pretty perfect. But this one, because I wanted it not only to stand out, but I wanted it to complement the background that it was on, I went in with some white crayon, right? White distress crayon, same thing. You're gonna go in and actually pushing that in, think of it like a cheese grater, and it's filling in those letters. And you want to keep coloring this time until you see that those letters are filled in, right? Because if you don't have them filled in initially, you're not going to have enough smudge to fill in the gaps. So I'll show you. This is what we have so far. See that? And then just take your fingers, or you can take a soft cloth, but you just want to buff this off. I prefer to use my fingers because I find like a paper towel or a cloth kind of gets in and scoops it out, right? Again, pudgy parts, right? You use the pudgy parts. You'll be amazed how many art tools you have, just different parts of your fingers, because it does the work, right? We all have those, and now you can use them. Look at that. Perfect, isn't it? Now, let's say you missed an area, you didn't like it. You could go back and add another layer and do the same thing again, just like I did on the hearts. If you wanted a certain word to be a different color, well, just be a little careful. You know, add a certain color there, rub it off, add a color there, but just make sure you don't put one in the other. But if you didn't like it, soak it in water and off you go. Yep. So there we have it. That's how easy it is to just alter a couple things, you know, from flowers to metal for Valentine's Day. How perfect to go into your stash of embellishments and just add a little shabby charm to it. Any of those things that you have, because there are those special words in everything, you know, like story sticks. These also, I think these retired last year, but there was love in there, or lucky, or story, right? Like your story, you know, you and your significant other, that's your story. I love these numbers, right? 365, 24/7, that's what those numbers are for. So just that right there is very significant, just to put on the sweetest little Valentine. Like 365, what is that? It's how many days I think of you, right? 24/7, that's how many out. I mean, it's very cool to just, I don't know. I'll stop now. I just keep blabbing away because that's just how I am. I'm a romantic. Sure. There you go. Oh, these.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thanks.
I think those also have been retired. Yeah, a lot of ideology stuff. And when I say retired for ideology, I mean that stuff stays around for a while, but things can't stay around forever. That's why I say every single time, it is great to have it, but man, if you don't use it, companies just don't keep it around forever. I wish they would. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. So far so good, guys. Just ideas. We're gonna keep going into the technique of it all and try to build up even more and more. So next up, let's just talk paper. I want to show you a really cool, really simple background, okay, that I did for this card. So you already know, and I'll talk about this, and then we'll get into the metal one next. So the top layer is just cardstock, right? There is no red ink at all. The only ink I used is brown. Shocker, okay? But what's cool about this paper is understanding it. And the paper that I'm talking about is idea-ology Kraftstock, but it is the new Kraftstock. So when I say new versus old, when we first came out with Kraftstock, it was a linen textured pad, right? That is craft on the back and printed color on the front. It has that linen, you know, that linen texture that's raised. And we had that for years. I used to partner with Coordinations, who actually brought out that sandable paper to the market. I collaborated with them, and when they went out of business, they're like, yeah, keep going with it. So Advantis, the idea-ology line, took that over. And we did it for years. But to be honest, as a stamper, as someone that likes to use die cuts or embossing folders, I'm not a fan of that linen texture in my makes, because you can't stamp on linen paper without getting that little waffly thing, right? It's kind of not my thing. So last year, 2021, we retired all the paper pads. They were going away anyway. And we reinvented or reimagined Kraftstock. So Kraftstock is sold in 3 different sets, if you will. This is the new size. It is not a gummed pad. It comes in warm, cool, and neutral. It's in just a random size. I think this is, I don't even have my ruler. Well, I've got my media mat, so let's just do a quick little measurement. Remember on your media mat, if you take it down to the corner down here is your 0. So if you ever need to measure something, put it in that bottom corner. So we know already it is 6 by 9. So if you ever need to measure your paper and you have a media mat, remember that bottom corner is your 0, and then you can measure it. Anyway, 6 by 9 paper. We also increased the weight. You know I like a good thick cardstock. So we went from 80 pound, which is what was in the pad, to 100 pounds. So it's a nice thick paper. It is craft paper with a printed color. That's what makes it magical. And you can see all of these colors. These are all inspired by the Distress palette. They're not matches to Distress, but pretty dang close. You can recognize Twisted Citron and Peeled Paint and Forest Moss and yeah, Salvage Patina, Broken China, Faded Jeans, Chip Sapphire. Yeah, pretty much went through, but it's not officially Distress branded, but that was the inspiration for this palette. And the neutrals, so many cool browns, you know, vintage photo, frayed burlap, you get the idea. Old paper, even down to some grays, pumice stone, hickory smoke, black, and then this is white. And white is interesting because, well, it's not really white, it kind of looks pink, but it's white ink printed on brown. So that's where you're getting kind of that interference. If you put it next to a white piece of cardstock, you'd be like, dude, that is not white. But if you were using a vintage collage of sorts or a background, and this was the only white in the mix, it would look white, you can see, compared to everything else, or beige, if you will. But here's what I love about this paper and why I love this smooth finish, because the smooth finish creates this effect like magic. And here's how. When you work with Kraftstock, the idea behind it, Mario, would you grab me a piece of chipboard real quick? Just I don't think I have a big sheet. Oh, no, I have one. Sorry, I had one. Thanks. When you work with it, you can do several things. I'm going to show you plain first, and then I'll talk about being embossed. You can use it as is. If you just like this color, you like how mottled it is, you do you, stamp on it, do your own thing. If you want to distress it, work on something other than your mat to sand. So it could be a piece of chipboard. You want something that's going to handle sandpaper. You're going to use, if you have a sanding grip, use it, or you can just use sandpaper, and you're going to sand this. Now, when you sand, keep that kind of motion, meaning if I go around the corner like that, you always have to clean off your paper. And that's going to show how much color is removed. You can see how easy it is to remove the color because the color is printed, okay? Super simple. If you wanted to create something that was just more grungy, not only do we want to sand, but if you have a sanding grip, kind of pop a wheelie, right? Pop a wheelie, bringing the base of that up to create some scratches, right? Or just go in, maybe you have a nail file, wipe this off. But look at the difference there. Can you see those little scratch marks? They're going to be very subtle at first, but they're going to show up. If you didn't want everything to be grungy and you just wanted the edge, you could take sandpaper or you could take a emery board, whatever, and you could just go along the edge as well. And all of these things right now seem insignificant, but that's where the magic of Kraftstock happens. That's the thing. It's like you could see it in a pack and be like, dude, I have colored cardstock, but thanks. But when you use it, you don't have Kraftstock. That's the difference. So I'm going to just take some Distress ink, blending tool. Now I'm just going with walnut stain, but it could be whatever color you want. It doesn't have to be brown if you don't want it to be brown, but I do love a good brown on here. Now I'm going to ink over this. And look what's happening. Okay. So I'm going to go in that corner. I'm going to go in this corner. Okay. And I'm going to go across the edge. So far you can see that wherever you sanded, you revealed the craft. Craft is very, very porous. So it soaks that ink in zippity-doo. That's what gives you those cool stains. You can see my scratches now. Isn't that awesome? So even though you probably didn't see it at first because they were super subtle, the more ink you put on there, the more the craft is going to absorb the color. But don't freak yet. If you don't sand something and we ink over it, so I'm going into this area, it will take some color because it's paper, right? It's still ink. It doesn't resist it, it takes some, but it certainly doesn't do this, which is what makes Kraftstock so magical. But it gets better. Because it's 100 pound and because it's now smooth, it gives us the ability to create reactive properties. That's what I was missing in this paper. That waffle pattern, whenever I would sand it, it would sand the texture, the linen, right? I wanted to get this effect. I also wanted to be able to add water because, well, you know, with Distress, I love the little drips and dribbles on there. So I'll do that. give it just a quick little blast with the heat tool because I want to outline those drips. Remember, if you want outlines, use your heat tool just to create that quick outline. Otherwise, if you just splat and lift, you don't get as much of an outline. Then take a paper towel, lift this off, just lifting off those water drips. All right, and look at that. Sweet mother of glory. I love this because it is ink. Because it is inked paper, when the distress goes over it, it will stay. But when you wet it and lift it, you will go back to that original core color of pink, even if you don't sand it, right? So we'll go into this area where, remember we added some ink. I'll add a little bit more water. Again, why do I use the heat tool? Because the heat tool just for a second will actually outline those drips. It just makes them more refined. Maybe you don't want to do that, right? Maybe you want them to be subtle. Something porous, just to lift that off. You can see that it's lifting off the ink, right? The paper towel is actually brown. But see that? So just that little subtle difference where you didn't think it was taking ink, it definitely did. And every color is going to give you this cool effect. So now if you take a closer look at this card, where it looks like all those great layers of reds and pinks and all, it wasn't. Literally red cardstock, sanded, inked with walnut stain, and splattered with water. And if you let the water sit longer in areas, it goes down and takes off more color, right? And if you let it sit where you sanded it, it will reveal the craft color. Right? It's going to reveal whatever was down there, but how great is that background? It just looks like so many layers. So let's talk about, let's see, I'm just trying to see. Is there a way to tell the difference of the packs from the new and the old? Yes, they're completely different sizes. The original was an 8x8 paper pad, and the new one's a 6x9 stack of paper. So visibly, it's completely different, right? If it was in the pad, it's the old textured one, and if it's in the pack of 6x9, it's this, because we only released it this way, which is perfect. All right. So now, oh, I see Paula answered it. Thanks. See, I looked down for a second, and Paula's already on the keyboard. She's got it. All right. So this is just again a color. This is run through a 3D folder, Sizzix folder. Love this. Let's just do a couple of things. Again, when I sand, I'm just going in different directions. You can sand as much or as little of this as you want. Okay, we're even going to do that little type. I told you, I love that. Just trying to get just the raised letters of that. So you can see I'm not even using a lot of pressure. I'm just moving and just seeing. Sometimes a nail file works for this really well too. Okay. When you're done, you need to wipe that off. You always have to wipe off whatever you sanded, whether you're using your hand or a cloth, because you still have, you see that little paper, see that paper dust right there? You always want to clean off what you sand because you don't want to get that into your ink pad, right? Sometimes people forget to clean their paper. One, you can actually see what you took off, but two, you don't want to get any of that paper pulp or dust into your ink pad if you can avoid it, because it's just, well, it's not good, okay? And we'll go back, a little ink. Look at that. Whoop, whoop. How cool. And you could always go back and do more. So let's say you sanded and inked and you're like, I want to do more. Okay. You can go back and sand it again and ink it again. You can do that as often as you want this to happen. And this, because it even has texture, I'll do that. I'll add a little water because, well, that's what I love to do. Just think that's what brings out kind of the magic in this. Again, that heat tool, just because if I'm going to drip, I want to see the drip. But if you didn't want splatters, you can mist it. You could even do a stencil through that, meaning you could take this essentially, un-anythinged. You can lay a stencil down, ink through a stencil, right? Lift it off, mist it, and you're still going to get the two tones on that paper just the same, right? Even without sanding. But Kraftstock is meant to be, well, sanded and distressed. Yeah, you're right, Mario. Sanding Grip was long retired. It had a good run. It was a great tool. How many years was it out? You think? Yeah, probably like at least, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years at least. All right, I'm going to dry this. I want to add some more drips to this. I can see that there's like an area right there that I just want to highlight. There we go. A little bit more water. There we go. And we're going to dab this off. So this is all about pieces. I did see someone say, I wish it was 12 by 12. I don't design in 12 by 12, but here's a suggestion. You can create a patchwork on a 12 by 12. So if you're a scrapbooker and you want to do a background, you know, you can take some different colors and create a patchwork background. That would be kind of the only solution. But yeah, we just don't design that big. I used to, back in the day, I used to do 12 by 12. It just doesn't sell as well. So they didn't want to do it. So here we go. Look at that background. You can see the beauty in that color. There we go. Look, the light hits it so much better that way. See that difference in the splats, the color, and then how that craft. Ooh. So a lot of fun. Same thing with the type. And I could go over this. I probably would. I'd sand this a little bit more. Maybe I'd even go black soot to kind of bring that up. So a lot of fun ways to use that. But when you see this card, it looks like, whoa, look at all those cool grungy inks. You know, how do you keep your red and brown from turning into mud? Well, the trick is you start with red Kraftstock and then you don't ever muddy your colors. So that's another great kind of card making tip. If you like different colors, even if you're not embossing, start with a color, do additional colors. It doesn't have to be brown and you don't even have to sand it. Then do your splattering and lifting and you can create inky backgrounds, essentially just using one different color of ink over a colored Kraftstock, okay? So let's talk about this next background. This will be a quick review, which is that metal, right? So this is the same metal that is done on this make. And again, this make, there's a full video tutorial from start to finish how this is done. But I'll talk about really how we create this, but different effects because it's not always about one thing. I told you one idea can spark a bazillion, okay? One idea can spark a bazillion. The heart is done using alcohol ink foil tape sheets. This is an adhesive back metal. It's a thin metal that is adhesive backed. It does come in 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 for card makers. And if you wanted it bigger, it does come in 6 by 12. But I'll be honest, that 6 by 12, like it is hard to maneuver. Like I get the 6 by 12, but I cut it up because this to me is more manageable. It's very thin and very sticky. And once it touches itself, game over, denied, right? If it touches, it's finished. So that's why I like to just work with this size. Even if I'm doing a bigger piece, I can patch it together. This is done simply by taking the foil, and to create this effect, we used alcohol ink. Now you can use alcohol ink or paint, but on metal for this effect, I really like pitch black alcohol ink. I add that just by dripping it on. I'm not going to go into detail of that because again, it's in the video. I'm going to demo this one instead. But you essentially just ink up, you know, after you emboss it. This is done with a 3D folder. Very cool. I love this riveted patchwork one. It's really nice. Ink it up, let the ink dry. You can use a heat tool and then go in with steel wool. Now I have a weird thing with steel wool. I cannot touch it. It absolutely skeeves me out. So I would either have to wear gloves or just ask Mario to do this. So for steel wool, I just take a blending tool that has Velcro and he just takes the steel wool, bundles it up, does a little honey bun tuck around there, right? With a little plier just to kind of give it a nice little finished edge so I don't have it. I don't know what you do, but I don't want any little stragglers. That's ugh. I don't want it to touch me. Anyway, now I can just go in and steel wool over that, and that's what removes the alcohol ink but leaves that black in the areas because you need to use steel wool to remove alcohol ink from metal. So that's kind of the trick on that. And again, you'll see that in the video if you're interested in metal. But now we'll take paint. Because what if we wanted to do that? And the reason I chose metal for this one, as you can see, it is curved. This was a foam, styrofoam heart, and we needed something that's going to create contour. So if you were going to want to create this effect on something round, maybe it's a styrofoam heart, or maybe it's something you already had, you definitely want this because it's pliable. It is just metal, so it will form even though it's done. And these are all cut up. Again, not going to go into detail. It's like I want to tell you how to do it, but the video's already there. Focus, Holtz. Focus. Let's focus on paint. What if we wanted to do it for a card? What if we loved that look, but we want to do it on a card? Could you do this with metal? Yeah, you could, but you're really wasting your metal. But if that's all you had, then definitely use the metal. But what I would say is, if you have any kind of metallic cardstock, right? This is just metallic Kraftstock. This is silver. But if you had any kind of silver cardstock or brushed silver, anything, you can achieve the same effect with metallic cardstock, okay? But metallic cardstock, alcohol ink is not going to be as forgiving on this because it's paper. It's going to want to soak in, and that is why I went with paint. So I use this one. This is the multi-level circuit. I love this one. I know Zoe loves it too. It's a good one. It's a bit finicky. I will tell you, if you are going to do metal, don't try to do metal with circuit because it's got all these little poke holes. It's not a 3D, it's a multi-level. Multi-level actually is stacked. 3D is contoured. So if you try to do this with that thin foil and you don't put like a barrier of cardstock, it'll stick into your folder. Experience on that one. So this is, again, cardstock. So sprayed it, embossed it. We've got that cool finish, but here's how easy it is to create an industrial, grungy vibe. Distress paint. I'm going to go in with a little black. Now it could be any kind of paint though. Doesn't have to be distressed. If you have black acrylic paint, paint is paint. Okay, for this particular one. Don asks, does anyone know if the metallic paper pads are going away too? They are going away. But I can tell you that it's going to be coming out next month in that new size, in the new thickness as well. So if you like this thinner metallic in the pads, load up because they're gone. But we are, because see, this is still pretty thin, but we are launching it because of the success of the Kraftstock in that 6x9 size and that weight. We are doing metallic, kind of a little sneak peek, right?
Yeah,
you watch this, yeah. That'll be released with Idea-ology later this year. So, all right. Well, earlier this year, but later. Okay, I'm gonna take some paint and I'm just gonna carefully apply it to my paper, right? You can see, I like black distress paint. It's definitely wetter than most paints, but I dig it. I'm just taking a blending tool. I have the same blending tool that's dedicated for paint, right? Because I use distress paint. Distress paint doesn't have any fillers. And because it doesn't have any fillers, it doesn't get crusty. So my foam is just gonna work indefinitely. And I'm gonna take that and really work that into the texture. So just work that over the top. Sometimes I may want some heavier areas, right? So I might pounce it in where you can see it's a little bit blacker there. Right there. You want to get the paint in there. Don't try to wipe it off at this point. Get your paint on. But this is what I was saying about working with paint to create a distressed effect. Remember when I talked about metal? That paint is that finicky thing that it needs to be dry, but not too dry, because once it's dry, it's permanent. But if it's too wet, you just wipe it all off. So you kind of have to do the waiting game. So usually, I just do a heat tool, because the heat tool to me levels the playing field. Instead of me waiting or forgetting, I know that if I do this for, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds or so at least, and I move this around, it's going to at least be drier than it was when I started, but I won't forget. Next, I'm going to take a paper towel, just a dry paper towel. So at this point, you can see it is painted, but the paint is still shiny, which means it's still wet. Dry paper towel, then I'm just going to go in and start lifting this off. Okay. Now, if you can scuff it off, and I'll show you what I mean by that, by scuffing it off, this is going to kind of shred the paper towel because of that, the texture of that. But see how I'm getting that really cool worn effect? If you didn't want a worn effect and you wanted it just to be a little bit more washy, could you go in with a damp paper towel? As long as the paint is still wet, like over here, it's pretty dry. So it's only going to let me hit some of the high points. There you go. So could I sand this at this point? Yeah. So could I, let's say I wanted these circuits to be brown. Could I then go in with the sanding grip, sand these little nuggety bumpety bits, and then go in with distress ink and make it brown? Yes, but I'm not going to, just showing you. So there is our circuit. Cool distress. Now I will say this, I'm going to probably talk more than 10 seconds. This is really dry. If you don't have it dry, you're going to remove more paint. I still like this look. I'm still going to use this look, but there is a big difference that when the paint is wet, you can remove more. If it's dry, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit, but I still like it. It's going to come off the high points, but just not the low points because that was dry. But pretty cool way to go in. And all this was just a panel that I slid under that die cut, but love the effect on a card. So a great way that we can incorporate a similar technique that we've seen in another kind of make, but adapt it to making cards or doing something else. So I do love that. All right. Whoop. Bye-bye, paint. Well, yeah, that was a pink one too.
Do you need it?
Yes, please. Mario's, yeah, it goes rolling across the floor. You can hear him like, do you need it? Do you need it? Okay. How are we doing? So far, so good?
Doing great.
Okay. Move this off. And off we go.
I knew you wanted pink.
Well, you know, it's for the last thing. I didn't even show what I'm going to use it for yet. So, okay. I know I'm blasting through a lot of stuff, guys, but I really want to share as much inspiration as possible with just different ideas of what you can do with things. So let's talk about wood grain. Because as I mentioned, when it comes to creating technique, wood grain is, well, it's a fave, right? I love using it for backgrounds. And I've shared how to do wood grain. There's a lot of different ways, but I always think you can never see a technique too many times before it clicks, before you get it. Sometimes you see it once, sometimes you see it a bazillion times. And Vicky Bouton's like, yes to the pink. Oh yeah, you'll see. I'm using pink and purple. Believe it, I am. So for wood grain, again, you could use your 3D folders. If you had 3D folder, you can use lumber. I'm using the Woodgrain cardstock in my Distress Line with Ranger because it's a thinner texture. So it's still textured, but unlike a 3D folder where it's really thick, which is great for certain things like the village or whatnot, to me, there's reasons for everything. On a card, especially because I want this to be more of the star of the show, but I want a subtle texture, I'm just going in with this because I also like the way it's going to fold, and you're going to see why I specifically chose this for what I'm going to show you over here, okay? But first we need to understand how to create wood grain. The wood grain cardstock, it comes in 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. It also comes in full sheets 8 1/2 by 11, I think. Ranger had it, then they got rid of it, but I think they brought it back. But each piece, it's similar but different, right? It's essentially a repeat pattern, but depending on where it's cut, like these are matchy-matchy, right? And these are matchy-matchy. You see that? But this is different than this. So it really just depends on the parent rule. It's not about finding the perfect pattern. It's all going to give you some good knot hole stuff somewhere. Okay. To create it though, really simple. It's wood grain on one side and flat on the other. It's really interesting how they create so much detail in it. But here's how we're going to create it. The colors, well, it could be whatever colors you want. Some people think that wood is just brown. Fine, use your brown. Maybe you want to do pink, maybe you want to do blue, maybe you want to do green, gray. This is kind of my wood grain palette, right? I love a little bit of gray, some different shades of brown, warm and cool. I like a dirty blue. It could be ice spruce, it could be weathered wood, stormy sky. And I like a dirty green, right? Maybe bundled sage, shabby shutters. But if you get too dark, like if you go into rustic wilderness or forest moss, you'll have more green in the background, which would be okay, but I kind of saved that for Christmas. So to create kind of this, what I like more of a barnwood look, that's my palette of choice. But again, you do what works for you, okay? So color-wise, we're just going to work here right onto the mat. Would you work in a splat box? You could, but I'm not going to for this just because I want to show you. So here's kind of how I divvy it up, because I do divvy it up. The dark colors, that's going to be these dark tones right here. I set them aside. So that's going to be hickory smoke and walnut stain. I'm going to set them aside. Because if I start dark, it's very hard to keep any space of color, right? It's going to want to overpower the color. So I'm just going to work with the colors. It's going to be frayed burlap. This is ice spruce, bundled sage, and brushed corduroy. Brushed corduroy for wood, man, it is the unsung hero. It is so good because it's kind of this honey brown, right? It's not a red brown like vintage photo. It is a good color for wood grain. Okay, so because I'm going onto paper and I don't want it just to soak right in as soon as I spray it, I'm just going to give it a couple of shots of water. Then we'll take some color and just think of it as a patchwork, meaning fill in some colors in just different areas. There's that bundled sage. Okay. Now, because we're dealing with a spray, we can also slowly push down on the little schnozzle and get a little spit. There you go, a little spit of color. That's good. Now, once I see movement, and I do see some movement, I'm just going to start drying it. I'm not going to go crispy dry yet. I still have some frayed burlap to get in there because I still want to get that in there. But I don't want everything to be soupy, because if everything's too soupy, everything's going to go in. Do oxides work the same? Well, oxides would work to color, but they will give you a different effect. Oxides are going to give you, well, an oxidized wood. So it's just more, oxides are going to give you more of this dreamy wood. So, and I'll talk about that. This one you can do with oxide, because that is a little oxide and stain, okay? So you can see it starting to dry. Let's hold this up so you can see that that's dry, but that's still wet. So it's starting to dry, but it's not crispy dry. I'm going with my water and just, again, the distress sprayer, if I commit, I get a mist. If I slowly squeeze the trigger, see, I'm getting that little splatter. That's what I love about this. I'm going for splatter because this is going to be reactive. We want that color now to really kind of move, gravitate a little bit. Now I'm going to take a little bit more frayed burlap. I didn't use much, but I'm going to do a little bit. That's nice. Let's go. There we are. Okay. That frayed burlap it's a very soft kind of grayish brown, but it's really good. Good color. But it's not super dark. You can see right now, nothing's going on. I want to get a little bit more movement. See, a little drippy movement. Nice. Okay. So far so good. Still not crispy dry. We don't need to crispy dry until we're done. Now I'm going to take the darker colors. I'm going to do a little walnut stain. You don't need much, right? Just a splat there is going to work. I'll do a little hickory smoke. I'm going to add just a little shot of water to each one. And then I want to break it up, right? So that means I'm going to take my fingers and I'm just going to break that up. This is on my craft mat, so not on the glass. You can see the reason that the media mat has glass and a craft mat is ink works different. It reacts completely different. On glass, it smooths and puddles. On this craft mat, it creates these droplets. That's what I want. I want droplets. If I go into here, I'm going to get this giant blob of color that I don't want, okay? So you can see here right now, this is still a little too wet for my liking before I go in. So I'm just going to dry it. If you ever want to speed up the drying time of paper, hold it up. Get it off the table. That allows heat to pass through the paper, even when you're embossing, and it will dry in half the time. Like, see? Dries so fast that way. If you're sensitive to heat, get yourself one of these little fancy gadgets. Yep. Hold that, and you can dry it. But you want that to be somewhat dry. Again, we're not crispy, but see, now I don't have that big puddly sheen. So now what I'll do is take my paper, and I'm just going to splash into the puddle, right? Just like splashing and swatting a fly. Look what I'm getting. Ooh, yeah, that's what's happening. Getting these little dark, I mean, I call them age spots, but I just like that. I think it's really, really good, okay? Those little spots are going to add a lot of depth to this wood grain. And we wanted them to be dark. So if we were to spray that walnut stain or whatever in there, it would overpower everything. If you want to get some movement, can you add some water like there on that walnut stain? You bet I can. I can work that out, get that going. And then because maybe I don't want it so dark in there, remember, you can always lift as well. Distress, you can add and remove, edit as needed. I'm going to dry it. We're going to go in and we're going to do another splash. Why not? And go in. But by breaking it up, that's what's giving me these tiny little specks. Okay. Now, if you run out of drips, but you still have some ink, you can go back and add some more water, right? But still break that up again, because that just means that that color's become concentrated. And if you don't go in and break it up, if you don't want to use your fingers, I mean, your hands will clean. But if you don't want to, you could put gloves on. You can try to find some sort of tool to do it. I'm not sure what you'd use, but you really want to break that up. That's what's going to give you these drips. Okay, I'm just going to go one more time. Excellent. Now this, yeah, if I was just working, I would just take another piece of clean paper, use up some of that ink, but just for the sake of the demo, I'm not going to. I'm just going to clean it up. I do like the fact that I can just clean this off. Remember on the craft mat, don't ever work from the outside edge. So if you're just going to mop it off, stay on the inside, don't go off the edge, right? Stay on and off. All about that. Okay, let's finish drying this. So now I'm good. I'm done. Other than water, I'm done with color. Because right now I've got some great effects. But remember, the whole thing about distress is it's reactive with water. And the more it's dry, your water is going to react differently. If you add water to wet paper, like we did initially, what happened? It blended the color, right? Wet on wet blends. Wet on dry layers. Which means now that I added some water on top of this, it's going to start to layer. So you can see what that water's doing. See that? Now, if you wanted it to be brighter, well, we have the technology. You'd go in with a paper towel and you could lift some of that off, and that's going to create those light areas. But if you don't want them light, then you can just let them dry just with the heat tool. So here we go. Here's our piece of paper. It's looking pretty good, right? Just colors. All right. Excellent, excellent. Okay. So that's what we have. Piece of paper. But what you'll notice when it comes to wood grain is that once you do all your inking magic, you're like, hold on, was there a wood grain in there? Yeah, there is, but you can't really see it because your eye is too busy looking at all the other stuff. So now we need to bring it back. We need to refocus what that is. Bring that back into the mix. So right now, I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. If you guys could see the small amount of space that I work in, I'm just going to throw it over here. Thank you. Just want to get these sprays out because I don't want to drop into stuff. And I always like to get this black paint one out of the way. Okay, so what I'm going to use is paint to go over the top. Now you could use white, you can use gray, you can use pumice, you can use blue, you can use whatever color you want. I'm using antique linen paint because, well, it's kind of an off-white kind of look, which I like. I'm going to take a little antique linen, put some on my craft mat. I'm going to take the distressed brayer. I've talked about this. There's a whole demo on just this brayer, why I like it, what makes it different. But if you have your own brayer, try it with your brayer. See if it works. This is kind of a soft yet firm rubber brayer. It's really designed for distressed products. It just works. But again, use what you have. I'm just going to get some paint on there. So when I'm doing this, you'll see that I'm letting the rollers roll across the paint. If you push down, see, if your finger changes colors and you do this, it's just going to slide like a squeegee. You need to just let it roll, man. And the reason I want to work on a craft sheet is because I want that paint to stay wet, but I want it to coat the brayer. See how it's coated? All right. And then all you're going to do is you're just going to gently just start rolling over the top of this, right? And move your paper around. Like let the different levels of paint hit it differently, right? You put on a little bit more, right? You don't want to have it too wet. If you have things too wet, it's going to go into the recessed areas, and we don't want that. We just want to highlight our texture. There we go. When you're done, flip it over on the little kickstand, little feet. It's there. Take a look at that. Wow. So good. That is good. All right. So while that's drying, I'm going to clean this up. Easy cleanup. Water for the craft sheet. Again, just take all of that paint and water and wipe that off. That's easy. The brayer, also super easy. So the brayer is designed that you can just grab the roller. I'll just use my fingers. The handles just come apart, so I'm going to push down, which just springs apart the handles and it removes it. See, this just springs open. That's my roller. The roller's just going to go right in the sink. I happen to have my lasagna pan of water over here.
Here we go.
It's really, we call it the lasagna pan. If you watch these lives long enough, you know what I'm talking about. But I just dipped it in water, and now I'm using, you can use a cloth, a paper towel, a baby wipe, but now it's clean. That's it. And then you can just put it right back on. So you just put that little foot into that hole. Again, stretch, let it go, and you're back to spinning. All right. So I do like to have that stuff clean. Paint comes off of your mat, easy, the glass or the craft mat. And then we have this. So now I'm going to dry this because I want it to be dry. Okay. Okay, here we are. Okay, so this is what we have. A beautiful painted one. So now we have some different stages. Let's talk about that because there were some questions about ink versus oxide. So this one is done with oxide. You can see it's much softer, right? The color blends are really soft. The brown, though, is still the stain, right? Because I wanted those age spots. So whenever you want something intense, you really need to go either with ink pad or spray stain, okay? So that's going to be that creaminess. If you stick with color, everything is a bit more vivid, if you will, okay? But then we take it to this step. So this is just taking it one more step. And this, I think, not only brings out the saturation of color, but it gives it almost like a wood veneer kind of varnish look. And so what I use for that is Distress Resist Spray. Now, Distress Resist Spray, you're going to have a love-hate relationship with this stuff because if you don't respect it and you don't use it right, it's only going to give you problems, okay? Because what it really is, it is a liquid, fluid, kind of, I don't know, like a gloss, if you will. Maybe, you know, some people compare it to like a glossy accent, some compare it to like a gloss gel medium, but it's very fluid. And it is sprayable, but every time you're done with this, you need to take off the sprayer, put it into water, maybe a sink, running water. I normally put like the little tube down the drain. I have the water running and I spray it in my hand, and you cycle water through the sprayer, then empty out all the water and put it back in there. If you just wipe off the nozzle, it's gonna clog on you probably 90% of the time. At least it does for me, because living in Arizona, it's pretty dry here. So, but Ranger sells replacement sprayers where you can just get a 2-pack of just the sprayers, and it fits any of the sprayers, right? So it'll fit like, you know, dilutions or any of the sprays. It's just nice to have that. So I'm gonna first kind of prime the pump in the background, back on my splat box. You can see it's there, and it goes on kind of purpley. Can you guys see that? There you go. It goes on kind of purpley. We don't need a lot of it. Could you, if you don't want to spray it, could you essentially brush it on? Absolutely. If you don't want to spray it and you just want to pour a little bit out and use a paintbrush and brush it on, yes, you can totally do that. All right. So here I'm just going to create just a quick little spray over the top of it. Don't need much. I'll wash this after the demo. It should be fine. If not, I have replacement sprayers, and then I'll just soak that one. And then I'll just kind of take my fingers and just it dries very quick, but any big like bubbles or drips, I just want to knock down with my finger. Well, there wasn't much there. It's pretty much already dry. It dries very, very fast. But to make sure it's dry, I will use a heat tool. And you'll see exactly what it did. It's crazy what that does. It really, really saves how cool that is. Okay. So do you have to heat dry resist spray? No, it's water-based, it will completely dry. But look at the difference that the resist spray did. You see how like before that paint was really kind of in your face, but because Distress is water reactive, okay, remember the stain is water reactive, and we added resist spray, which is essentially water, it reacted that ink again and kind of brought that up, so you get the best of both worlds. Isn't that just the coolest wood grain? So simple, from a white piece of paper. But these could be any colors. If you don't want to do grungy wood, maybe you want to do pink wood, right? Really, or speckled egg, right? Shabby chic furniture is all the beautiful pastels. So you could really create some beautiful wood grains. But the reason I wanted to do this is because one of the dies, that faceted heart, can you grab that, Mario, please? No, you know the one that's like the boxy heart thing? I love that die. I really do. And I've used it for a lot of things. But how cool is it to have hearts that look like they're made out of wood, but they're not. They're made out of paper. No, the one that's like red and it's kind of these diamondy hearts. It's a big red heart. It's going to be near the back. But here's what's cool about this. It comes in 2 sizes, right? And you just cut it and fold it. It makes these puffy hearts. But I like the fact that it is essentially a carved heart. Now, these could be used on a lot of things. It could go on a vignette. It can go in a frame. It could go on a card. The smaller one goes on a card. This is how it's cut out. That's really it. It's pretty simple how it's done. No, it's this one. Thanks. There we go. That's the die right there. So you can see it cuts 2 different size hearts. It's a bit tricky when you first do it, but here's the thing to remember. And if you remember nothing else, if you own this die, you remember nothing else. I don't know how many times I've cut this wrong, and then I was like, oh, I even did it wrong for this, prepping for this live again. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I just, oh, this is the wrong one. So I'm showing you anyway. Okay, when you have this die, I don't know why, but your brain tells you this is the heart, this is the front. No, this is the back. It's the flat back. And so whenever I put it on my paper, I was always like trying to find that perfect. I was like, oh, look at that. That's awesome. Cut it out. Done. It's in the back. Nobody knows it's there but me. In your heart, you'll know it's there, but it's super annoying that the best part is in the back. The front of the heart, okay, is that triangle right there. So you can often, you know, put a Sharpie mark or whatever. I just know because I remember the face. He's laughing at me. That's how I always remember it now. I'm like, just find where the heart is laughing at you, and that's the part you want to see. That triangle is that sweet spot right there. And if that matters to you, great. If it doesn't, great. But if you want to have that little knot hole somewhere in the front, just remember, if your die is laughing at you, that's where it is. And it's the same little small laughter right there. That's how I remember. But really, you could go in with a Sharpie. But that is the part that's going to be there. So when you cut that out, it cuts and it scores. So the first thing I like to do is I'll go in with, after I cut it, I'll go in with just a clear block. It's the same way when I talk about the village, and I go and do all of my folds. So I'll just find the lines. And on wood grain, it's challenging because you got lines going everywhere, every which way. But I can go in, push that down, take a paper creaser, right? Really go in and create and score this, just because it's so much easier to assemble if it looks like this, if all of your crease lines are really folded and scored ahead of time. Because it's weird, but once you do it, you'll get the hang of it. Easiest thing is to remember that we start with the smile, right? We want to start with the area that is going to matter the most. Okay, so I won't build this because it takes some drying time, but you're going to get the idea. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on these tabs because I'm going to start right at the very front. And these little tabs are going to go right underneath that little triangle. Okay, and I like collage medium because even though I have glue ooze, it's never going to show. It dries completely matte. And then this one goes in. So the paper will start forming, and the collage medium can go right over the top of this. So you can just kind of spread it out with your fingers because it has resist spray. It's going to be fine. It's not going to react to anything. If you want to try this with tape, you can. I haven't had very much luck with this in tape, but you can. Anyway, you're going to hold this. In collage medium, I would say hold it for at least, I don't know, if you can give yourself 2 minutes, that's going to be the best before you move on, because it's going to grab, but as you start maneuvering, you're going to create, no, it's not going to do it, but there you go. You'll create enough tension that it's not fully dry, but after like a minute or two, it'll be dry. But you start with the front, just like that. Then you're going to bring around the back, and you're going to glue that. So really, you've created a pocket, right? Just kind of like a mouth. Or in high school, if you did those little paper game things, it's kind of like that. But you glued that. So that's really what you have so far. It's the front part that gets people kind of worked up because your folds are all going the right direction and it looks like this and you're like, something's wrong, it's not working. This piece needs to be the innie, which makes these the outies. So once this is glued, right, and everything's dry, I put glue on all 4 of these tabs, make sure they're tucked going in the opposite direction, and then you simply pinch this area with your fingers, see? And everything would be lined up. You'd have your collage medium, but and then you just hold it with your fingers, and that's what creates that innie and outie. And you just sit there, sing yourself a song, watch something, do whatever that is, but that's the easiest way to build this. And the cool thing about this die is it could be metal. So if you wanted to do that cool technique like we did here, well, then you could have the paper metal, or you can just do one out of white paper, build it, and then do this technique where you're literally sticking foil tape over the top of it. Then that's adhering something dimensional, which is what we did here. So there's a lot of options, but sometimes when you see a die, because when we do packaging, we just try to do the most, I don't know, basic shape, if you will, just to show you what it does. And even this doesn't do it justice. You can kind of see that it's faceted, but not much. It's just a cool die. And then when I'm done, because trust me, when I make these, I am full of imperfections. I got white paper showing. I got a whole lot going on. Sometimes my paper breaks because I folded it a bazillion times, or I just get kind of just nutty. It's an easy way to fix it. Always, always. Let me put the cap right on this stuff before it dries up. Distress crayon to the rescue. So once it's all done, I'll just go in and I'll use this and I'll go right over those crease lines. That's going to create a highlight. I can even take the edge and go right in there, right? I can move this with my fingers. And that is even going to highlight those facets. You don't have to do it this way, but I like the idea that if I have misaligned paper, and look, I do. You can see it now, right? Clear as day it's misaligned, but you didn't notice it when I held it. Why? Because instead of cutting it off, which you could, I just went in with crayon. Just fill it in. So whatever color you're doing, if you need to color this with pink or white or whatever, it's an easy way to kind of fake it. And I like the idea of creating essentially paper wood hearts. I see a question, can you use Yupo? I've not been successful folding Yupo. Yupo's plastic, so that would be like trying to make a box out of something like this. So if you could try it, but I think it's too flexible. I would stick with paper, but hey, never say never. Somebody might get it. I mean, Natifa made an envelope out of Yupo, which I'd never seen. So it definitely has fold potential. I just don't know if this is going to be too intense. But I wanted to share with you that, you know, taking a die that you may have had, maybe you've used it, and maybe you've always just done color cardstock, it's very cool to look at your dies, and by changing your substrate, you can really change the shape into being something else. Like these to me look like very cool wood hearts, especially with that resist spray. And if you put these on another wood panel or put it in a frame, I mean, it would look like carved wood hearts. You wouldn't know it's paper. And I'm not just saying that. You know, I know sometimes makers like, you would never know it's paper. You really wouldn't. This is
No,
pretty
you
legit.
wouldn't.
It's pretty cool. All right. Validation from Mario. See, I got to look there to, just to make sure, because normally someone would be like, yeah, right. But you don't get that during the lives. Okay. So far, so good. Here we go. Just going to do a quick little clean. Simple. People say, how do you keep your hands clean? I wash them. Just little water occasionally. I don't mind getting ink or anything on my hands. I just don't like the fact that, it just gets too sticky. What is the best, if you're asking, Emily's asking, what is the best glue for Yupo? Yupo in general on a card, double stick tape is the best for Yupo. So I use score tape or Xyron or foam tape, but I don't typically glue Yupo because it doesn't really like most glues. So, okay, moving right along. Hope you guys are doing good. I'm just throwing ideas out there, so I hope you guys are okay with that. Next thing is not forgetting stuff that we had. Again, I talk about the season. I talk about seasonal stuff. And over the season last year, we launched these wonderful mica stains, right? Now, these were only available for the season. They have sold out as far as everywhere that I know. But I also know that many of you, like me, bought many sets. I did. I got many sets. And I said, I'm going to use them I'm going to use them. I'm going to use them year round because I like them. It's not going to be part of the line, but I love what it can do because by having these Halloween and Christmas colors, we essentially had a full palette, and there's great colors to use for Valentine's Day. Winterberry, peppermint sticks, really good. You can also throw in a little hocus pocus if you want purple, but you can create beautiful effects with mica stains on the background for Valentine's because whether you're working on white cardstock, remember these are the swatches we did, or craft, or black, it is nice to have that medium. But often, right, we got them at Christmas or got them at Halloween, and maybe you put them away with those things. Or maybe you just said, oh, I'm going to only bring them out for Halloween and Christmas. But it was nice. I mean, I think they were on the market for what, at least 2 months. Yeah. They were on the market for 2 months. So, because many people got multiple sets. So that's like a 2-month delay. So the cool thing about this is that we can take these. I love craft, but you don't have to do it on craft. You can do it on any color. This has a little texture paste. We'll get into texture paste in another demo later in this one. But just wanted to share that we can take these stains. I'm going to shake them up. Right? I like to lay them on their sides first because that's going to get that pearl powder to mix up. But they're really, really cool. Simon says, I wish you would have bought more. I think everyone says that afterwards. But it's one of those things, that you're like, yeah, I think that's enough. Because really, Ranger manufactured it for... Like they didn't just do one little batch. They manufactured to fill the marketplace because we didn't want to create any crazy drama out there. But yet still people, when I said you better get it while you can, they thought, oh, I'll wait until, October or whatever. And then, well, that's it.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, that's just how it is. But I like that, and, the nice thing is next season they can come around. These won't, but next season there'll be stuff. So here we go. Winterberry. Look at that. Pink on craft. This is what I love about, and if you don't have mica stains, I don't want you to sit there and go, well, what's the point? I can't really see this. You can still work with your oxide. You can still work with your distress sprays. You can even use distress mica spray, which is kind of an overspray on that. It's just different. And I'm showing it because I said it. I said I would, and I'm sticking to that. And trust me, my friends at Ranger, they grit their teeth. They're like, Tim, please do not show this because it's not available. I'm like, but people got it. People got it. People bought it. And I said that I would use them year round. And I'm sticking to that. Just because it's not available to the market doesn't mean that people didn't buy it. And if you have it, the whole point of these kind of demos is to remind you what you have and how to use it. And
but a lot of people do have it. I mean, it was for sale for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Before it ran out, so that means a lot of people got it.
Right. And so that's why I said to Ranger. Ranger's like, okay, we get that. I'm like, I know, haters are my motivators. We're still going to get the nasty messages and text afterwards. But that's okay. It's never going to stop me from being a maker because I think that, the most important thing I've learned is everything that we buy, it's an investment. Sometimes we buy it with the best intent to use it. Sometimes we even outgrow stuff and we either sell it, give it away, whatever that is. But the important thing to remember those things and how to use them differently is is my favorite thing about, I think, the industry at large, is to remember that when you have it, there's always a cool way to use it.
Hey, I have
This
chased
stuff?
coconut syrup around the globe.
Yeah, yeah. Mario loved Starbucks coconut syrup, and it was only seasonal. And I mean, really, it friends in Hawaii, right? Chow sent it to us.
Yep. Now it's gone again.
Yeah, now it's gone again. But that's just it. You know, that's Starbucks. So what are you going to do? Well, too bad.
That's right.
Next time you find it, buy
better
more.
buy more.
Yeah. I mean, that's all you can do. I'm just mopping this up because I want to. You know, it's important to me. It's a big commodity. I mean, people think, oh, Tim, you must have unlimited supply. I do not. I got what I got, and I'm not gonna. So that's just my overspray. So that's another thing. Sometimes I do love the splat box. I do. But the other thing to know is, you know, if you want to use the residual, the splat box isn't going to let you do that. So that's really why we have a big workable space on the media mat, because it'll catch the overspray and you can still utilize it. And this is just a starter. But this, I mean, look at that great foundation. I still get that shimmer. I could use it. I could cut it. I could add more spray, but at least that's not going to waste. And beautiful colors. I mean, the joy of having these mica stains, and for those that have it, I mean, look at that. It's just it's so radiant how those colors shine. But when you look at it, it's not bling. It really isn't. You just, as soon as that light hits it, that's when you see it. And you could use them with your other colors. So if let's say you're down to a little bit, well, use some of this and maybe use a comparable color of distress stain or your ink pad, because that's going to make that go a little bit longer for you. So anyway, just wanted to share that quick background, because I know if you're like me, I did stock up on them, and I don't want to wait until next Christmas or Halloween and go, oh, I've never even used those since then, because that's not good. That's not good at all. All right. Next up, now that we're on the subject of seasonal, I'm just driving it home, because if we're going to do seasonal, we're going all the way. Another favorite. Now these are my jam. I wish that, I mean, I'll be honest, I wish that this product was part of the everyday line. It's not, it won't be. But these are the mica crayons, and I do believe I've seen a couple of stores that still have these. But what's cool about these crayons, I know they just say distress crayons, right? But these particular crayons that came out, these coordinate with the seasonal mica stains. These are mica crayons. So these are crayons that actually have that little bit of shimmer or mica like you see in the spray, and they're available in those same colors. I love these. I keep them separate from my other crayons because they don't say anything other than a distress crayon. And unless you're familiar with the color name, the cap does have a little bit of a kind of a pearly sheen compared to the regular crayons, right? It does, but I like to keep them separate. I think these are so cool because these have color and they have that shine in them. So I'm going to do a quick collage with them just to show you how they work. So as with anything, I like to swatch them, right? So these are the crayons just colored out. So you can see, there we go, when the light hits it, it's a very subtle sheen. They're not glittery, right? It's not sparkly. It just has that wonderful mica sheen to them. Craft, ooh, you really see that. Look at that color. Black, whew, this is why I like them so much, because honestly, I thought that they would be a little bit more translucent. I'm like, okay, when we did the metallic crayons, you know, it's really more pearl, less color. These have all the punch of color and that punch of shimmer. So they're freaking amazing. And of course, they're water reactive, so you can watercolor with them and still get that mica in there. So what we're going to do is just do a collage tag, and we're going to do color with all of our crayons. So I have a tag. I did go in, grab a few things. So here's what I went in with. Again, going into my stash, I went into ephemera. This is nothing seasonal. I just picked out something I want. Photo booth. Ooh, photo booth has so many romantic things. So many couples, dapper gentlemen, beautiful ladies, kids, a lot of fun photos in photo booth. Photo booth for Valentine's Day, so many great options to create something romantic. Salvage tags, again, another one of my favorite SKUs, because you could use them as a tag, but it's just very cool backgrounds, because to put a tag on a tag, there's just different ones. So I pulled out a tag from this. I chose, well, let's see, there's a lot of different stuff. I went into mini marquee. I love these little marquee letters. So I'm going to use that in my collage. And so I just gathered stuff, right? Normally I would have this out on my table and I'd make a lot of collages, but just for the sake of this demo, I just went in and plucked out some things that I wanted. You'll see that I already made a little embellishment. I'll talk about that, but just things. Things are gonna make you happy when you use it, okay? Regular tag. Now this could be an etc. tag, this could be whatever. This is another cool thing. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'll tell you this. Okay, so there are just, I'm not gonna say there's days, there's weeks that just the popcorn is spinning, right? The cooker's on, the oil's in there, and it is hot as blazes. And those kernels are just moving, but nothing is popping. But it's spinning and it's on and I'm trying. And I never want to feel defeated creatively. And I think as makers, it's important to never let yourself get there because it's hard to get out, right? Once you get down that hole of not making because you're uninspired, it's very hard to climb out of that hole. So don't let it. Instead, do something else. And so there's often times that, you know, like you see, and what gave me the idea is how people like prep their meals, right? Where they're like, oh, I'm going to prep my meals for the week. I'm going to get all my stuff. I'm going to put it in bags. And I'm like, man, I kind of need to do that creatively. Like I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to go through my ephemera or go through my photos and pick out things that I like. And I'm going to just make little packs, little collage packs of things that I want. One, it's getting me familiarized with stuff that I have. Two, it's allowing me to play with, you know, all the little trinkety bits that I have instead of never using it. And it's putting stuff together in a bag. And what that allows me to do is that then when I want to sit down and just glue stuff, right? Because that's another day of like not creative thinking, right? So this was all the creative play of tucking it. I may use this, I may not. I may add something, I may not. But now I've got things that if I wanted to just sit down one day and just glue things, I don't have to think of what I'm going to glue. I just open up one of these little collage packs. Sometimes I'd be like, what were you thinking? Other times I'm like, wow, this is very cool. So just keep that in mind. We creatives or makers, you're not always firing on all cylinders. Sometimes it's just it's a slow roll, which is what it is. Okay. So I'm going to take a collage brush. It's a brush specifically for collage medium. You could use a paintbrush, but this one, you can see it's a really rigid brush. It's a small one. It's hollow on the inside. That's really important when you're doing glue. If you have a hollow brush on the inside, it allows you to control how much glue is on your surface. Then I'm going to go in with some collage medium. All right, open this up. And we're going to start. So here's just some elements, some pieces. Here's the tag that I took out. Look how cute. It's really just a calendar tag, right? They're all double-sided. All the tags are. Ephemera is only single-sided. But then I just circled Valentine's Day. I'm like, I want a whole pack of these. This is really cool. I think I did a stamp like this too. All right. So we're just going to start building. Now, you might be one of those builders where, you know, you need to kind of figure it all out ahead of time. I refer to those people as hovercrafters because you hover and you really don't commit. And I think that, you know, you could have an idea. Yeah, you can like take that and say, okay, this is going to be a general idea because maybe you do want to figure it out, especially if you're working snack bag idea, right? You might want to figure out like, okay, I need this there because when you're gluing, you know, there's no takesies backsies. If you do that, just set it aside and get a new tag and transfer because you're working from the bottom up. You know, taking this off and like taking a photo with your iPhone and all that, that's a bit tricky and a bit challenging. So just get another tag and work that way. Because I'm going to work with collage medium, I want to work on the craft mat. This allows collage medium to wipe right off of the surface. So it just makes it much, much easier to do. Also, when I'm doing quick collage, which is what I call this, I'm just going and I want it to layer. I'm also just going to take a dry paper towel because that's going to make things go really quick. Some people use a brayer. I just prefer to use a paper towel. So I'm just going to take some collage medium. I'm just going to start, let me move this out of the way. There we go. I'm just going to start brushing this on. And I'm going to go off the edge. I don't have to worry about that. Take my first piece. I think I'll use this. And I'll probably go, I think I'll go this way. The thing about collage medium has the drying time of now. So once you place it down, okay, you can take a dry paper towel and you can just rub over that just to get out any air bubbles, but I'm not wiping off the glue. But this is like, it's stuck in place already. If I wanted to move this, that's not happening. Denied. That's why I like collage medium, because a lot of times when you work with the gel medium that's too wet, you're going to get lift, you're going to get bubbles, you're going to get what I call lasagna. It's just going to ripple, and I don't want to have to wait for my next layer. I don't want to have to dry it. I just want to go for it. So I'm putting another bit of collage medium. Now I'll take this piece And I'll probably go to the edge on this one. Okay, I don't mind if I go off the edge, right? See, I went off the edge here as well. This, again, just gets rid of the air bubbles, and then I can go right over the top of it. I don't have to worry about anything moving or anything like that. This, well, make sure I got my date. And I did do this in a permanent marker. All right, we'll take that, cover that up, just make sure that's kind of straight. There we go. Air bubble out, and now it's like, so now it's down there. So it's really like pushing that air out. That's what kind of makes it almost secured to the surface, if you will. And I'm just going for it. Let's see. Let's do that little ticket. I think that little ticket's fun. Maybe I'll do that down here. All right, and I'll leave some of that area exposed. So let's go from here. I think I'll even take that across. There we are. And could you do that step with your finger? Sure. So collage brush. So here's the thing about collage brush. Let's say you had too much glue, which that's clearly too much glue. All right. You can always stand up this brush, and when you drag, just lightly drag over the top, see how it just expands the brush and it picks up all your glue. See that brush just kind of goes almost oval shape, and then you can just squeegee it right back into the jar. So that's the beauty of these brushes. This is the small one. They come in 3 sizes. This is the small one that I really like. Okay, and my tag is essentially stuck on the craft mat right now. That's the other thing. It's because there's a little bit of glue under there. All right, let's do that. Actually, I want to cover that hole because that hole, that bothers me a little bit. I'll take a little bit of collage medium, put this down. Okay, and maybe, yeah, I think I even want to, no, I'll go right there. Because once I push down and get rid of that air, like that's it. So you're committed to that now. Okay. Then we have this. Now, you could do a lot of things. You could, not everything has to be a collage. I'm not going to glue this down. I'm going to actually attach it. But you could tint these. You can go in with your distress crayons and you can color this. You can do so many different things to photo booth. I know there's a lot of makers, Paula and Stacy, they do a lot of tinting on these. So you can do essentially whatever it is that you want to create with. All right, I just like this. This was a piece that, this was Stacy's that she sent to us that we could scan in for ephemera. It's just a cool art shop. I love that palette, right? Again, push that down over the top. And we have the little handle with care. I think I'll use that too. I'm just not sure where yet. So I'm going to set that aside. Have those couple other things. So next thing is collaging. If you're collaging and you know you're going to go back, it's a good idea to wrap this in a baby wipe, okay? Or a damp paper towel, either one. A baby wipe is just going to keep this wet, so you don't ever want to stick that in water, because if you stick it in water and you get water in your brush, it is going to make it too wet when you're going back for glue. So I'm just going to spray this paper towel. I don't have a baby wipe right here, and that's okay. You don't need one. If you have a paper towel, you can still wrap that. So as long as that's just damp, that's good. Okay, so here's what we have so far. All right, doesn't take very long for this to dry whatsoever. Super, super simple. Okay, crafting commitment issues. That's the thing. We totally have to get over those issues. Now, just a dry paper towel that's going to get rid of all that glue. You could take this off. This is easy to peel off, but I'm not doing that. But just dry, you get all those like little collage crumbles out of the way. We're going to dry this. Could you wait for it to dry? Yes. Am I going to? No. Just going to dry it. And I like the texture of that brush too. I think it's really good. Pretty simple. How do you know if it's dry? If you touch it and it's not wet, it's dry. It shouldn't look wet either. This is going to be a matte finish. Then we're going to trim it. So I'm just going to take tonic shears. I just like these big guys just because I can flip the tag over, go right along the edge, and just chop that off, right? You want to just cut from the back. One, you can see what you're cutting, and two, you don't have separation anxiety of, oh, I didn't want to cut that part off. Yeah, well, you did. So it is. You get what you get. That's the beauty of collage. We want that to be very, very serendipitous, if you will. So next up, just going to dry this a little bit more. It still feels a little, see that little tack? I don't want it to be tacky at all. I want it to be dry. And we're going to add some color to this. Now color is going to be super easy when it comes to working with this, okay? When we color, because we did collage medium everywhere, it essentially sealed this paper. So if you were just to glue down something with collage medium or glue stick and not cover the top of it, the crayons are not going to have much movement, right? You're going to be able to color, but you're not going to get the play or the movement that you want. It's really important that you have the entire surface covered. It doesn't have to be a thick layer, but you want a layer of collage medium because that's what's making these crayons do the dance or do their thing. So now we can take those crayons, scribble them on. You could do, honestly, whatever colors you want to work with. I'll probably stick a little Valentine-y, right? Look, pink and purple. What's going on with that? I'll still throw in a little blue, and you bet this one's going to get some brown because that's a little crooked broomstick in there because I just want to have some of that. Okay, just adding that just to start. And I'm going to throw in a little bit of red as well. Could you do one color at a time? Yes, you can. But you can also just go in and just move this around. And moving it, I'm changing my blending tools, aka fingers, depending on the color, right? So I use the same blue, purple one, but the red one I kept separate, so I can just go in with the red. And I'm just pushing the color, pushing it right over that collage medium, moving it into that area. It will go over the ephemera as well, if you want it to. Just going around those edges. Crooked broomstick has kind of like almost like a vintage gold to it. It's a bit grungy. Okay, let's add some more color here, and we'll even throw in a little bit of flickering candle because we do need some flickering candle there. Add a little bit more blue over here and here. All right. I love the ability of just manipulating these colors. And when you work these colors, especially when you get into that second layer, don't sit there and overwork the crayon. Meaning, just smudge it a little bit and be good. Be good with that, because if you just keep massaging it or working into that area, you don't get those pops of color. You just kind of get too much gunk, I guess. There's still a little yellow there, so I'm going to make some orange. Here we are. Okay, so far so good. Let's take a little bit of empty tomb. This is going to give me a little bit of gray, right? Just kind of want to grunge that down. Move that. All right. See, I can just color all day. Okay, so far so good. So next, a little bit of water on a paper towel, because now I want to do some reveal, meaning you can see, look at those crayons. See what I mean? You get the intensity of the color, but man, when the light hits it, you get just that cool shimmer. But it's over the ephemera. If you like it like that, leave it. But if you want to reveal, if you want to have some stuff exposed or revealed, you can go in with a damp paper towel and you can clean off any of that stuff. Like up here, right, where it had a lot of purple and blue, just clean that off. This way you can get that piece back. Down here, right, looks a bit mucky, clean that off. The crayons are water reactive, so adding a little bit of water, not to the surface, but to an actual paper towel, is just gonna let me clean some of that area off. We can also take a stencil. Let's see, what do we have from a stencil perspective? It could have been any of the ones that we have, but let's just say we have some dots, because this is right here, okay? You could take a stencil if you had a pattern and take that damp part of the paper towel, and we can even go through that stencil wherever we have the color and just add a pattern, right? Look at that. Just takes that off. So it's really just wiping through the stencil with that damp paper towel. But because we're not wiping directly over the top, we're able just to lift off some of that. And you can do this anytime, right? You could come back to this make with a damp paper towel in a month and still lift that off if you want. But just add some interest. Looks kind of like a carnival, kind of circus. Maybe that's where they're at, right? Maybe they're at the carnival. Okay. So what can you do with this? Well, a lot of things. Sure, we can distress it. We can go along the edge of our mat, right, just to create those little creases. So I'm just using the corner of my media mat. If you have a paper distresser, you can do that too, but the media mat's going to kind of round that paper. So I'll just show you what I'm doing, because I do like the fact that the mat is off the edge. I told you, you kind of use everything around you. So I'm just using that raised up glass edge because it's tempered glass. And I do this a lot just to create that great quick tattered effect. Simple. And do a little inking. There we go. And roll that around. See? Easy, easy. So how do we want to attach this? Well, we could do a lot of different things. We can go in with glue. See? I love having that texture that you could glue everything down, right? But having that little bit of texture is what I think makes it, well, it makes it most exciting. Don't you agree? Right, Mario? Mario agrees.
I sure do.
He's like, absolutely yes. So I'm going to go in with a tiny clip. How tiny? Tiny. There it is. That's a tiny clip. A tiny clip compared to a hinge clip. I don't know if I have a hinge clip. Let's see. Do I? I'm going in my bucket over here. No, that's a larger hinge clip. But yeah, it's a tiny little clip. Just for fun, right? I can add a little clip right there because I think that's a great way to maybe make it look like it's on there. You can wrap some string. We can do foam tape. We could do whatever we want. But you know, I'm also a fan of a tiny attacher. So even though I have a clip, right, I can still go in and just add the tiny attacher. The tiny attacher, you simply just commit, right? When you're doing it, that means commit, right? Don't sit there and hesitate. It's a great tool for a lot of different things. Handle with care. Let's see. Should I use that? Actually, I think I will. So this I want to use on this element, and maybe I even want to put this a little bit layered under there. See? Because once you kind of get the perspective, that's where I like to save a couple little bits to say, oh, well, maybe I want to put that there. Or, hey, maybe I actually want to balance this out because I've got pink over there and I want a little red. Ooh, I like that. Okay, well, now we can go back to our collage. Now, because we have crayon, remember, it's going to be reactive. That's okay with me, right? Just if you don't overwork the area, you're going to be fine. But that just goes right in that area. A little bit over the top, work that in with my finger, and that's it. So if you leave yourself a couple little areas, you can always go back and add an element to the top, and don't worry about when it comes to oh gosh, I have all this stuff and I put it in my, especially if you're bagging it out, I put it in my little snack bag, I need to use it. You don't need to use it. You don't need to use everything. Just use the stuff that you want. But man, there's so many other things that I can do to this tag, rub-ons, washi tape, all sorts of things. But for now, I'm just going to keep playing. All right, so now I've got this little love token. So this is one of the adornment arrows. There's one of those little coins. I went in with a red crayon to fill that in, tied it with a little red thread, right? Look at that little embellishment. We'll glue that on. But I'm going to glue last, right? Because that needs to set aside. Or you could do foam tape. But I also love these guys. I love these little mini marquees. They're just those... I love them. I love them. But they need to go over something where they're visible, right? Meaning if something's too busy, it might get a little mucky up here, I think is really good. So let's take that off. Let's just go in with the tiny attacher for these. So if you notice, I'll point this out again in my, I don't know. Yeah, my pork chop hands aren't going to show you. But on these marquees, there's one edge, one end. It's usually the top part of the letter that has a little bit more space than the bottom. Some people think they're cut uneven. It's by design. It was really put that way so you can go in with a tiny attacher and attach it, right? So this is going through, well, some pretty thick acetate. That's what it's designed to do. I'm going to embrace my wonkiness just a little bit. I know that Paula would be shocked. But now I can go in, just give these a little bend, right? Again, so they have a little lift on there, but I like that because see, that's going to give me a whole different, it's all about, for me, when it comes to collage, I love texture. I love metal, I love shiny things, I love adding a little fabric, and I could just keep going and going, but I wanted to give you the gist of all those ideas for collage. Some people get so intimidated by collage because they're like, I don't know where to start. Well, the first thing you need to do is to actually get some product out. That's the best thing. The next thing to do is you need to just put stuff to paper and go for it. Because if you don't, you're never going to get anywhere. That's the whole idea. You can live in that like creative fear world that you're just creating. Again, the advice, get over yourself. If you can get out of your head about stuff and put stuff down, even if you have to compartmentalize this whole thing. Like, okay, I want to gather my stuff first. Okay, I want to just make my embellishments. I've done so many videos where I say, just make little embellishment things. Who cares what you're going to do with it, right? Like tying that and doing that ahead of time, it was ready for me to glue it down. But these little ideas, I think, just makes for a fun, very playful tag. And if you don't like a color, right? Let's say you're looking at this and you just think to yourself, you know what? I can't stand anything about this. And I'll show you, because there are often times that I'll look at something and go, oh, you know what? That blue is just driving me crazy. Beautiful thing about a crayon, damp paper towel, you can get rid of it and say, you know what? I just want to add more red. It's Valentine after all, red and pink. You can go back and do that indefinitely. And if you change your mind and you want to go back to blue, you can do that too. I just really try to encourage you to get over that fear factor of creating and do your creative play. But these crayons, man, that's why I told you, they just have such a beautiful effect because it creates that luminous finish on a collage. Really simple, right? I think it is. I think it's very, very simple to do. If you just don't overthink it, because that's easy to do. It's very easy to overthink stuff and, you know, wonder what if, is that going to work? Is that not going to work? And I am that person that definitely loves the creative playtime, but not everything's about making, right? Sometimes I don't feel like making stuff, or I just don't have an idea to connect the dots. Okay, that's right. I see so many comments of play, because that is the best part. It's the part that I think most makers rob themselves of, especially when I read on social media, you know, like, I haven't taken this out of the package, or I don't know where to start. Of course you do. You know where to start. You just don't want to start. And you really need to just get the stuff out and jump right in. So that'll bring us to, Mario's just laughing, because I'm like, this is probably going to be a long one, because it brings us to kind of I had this idea that I wanted to create a Valentine thing inspired by conversation hearts, because I don't know any other time of year where you see these colors and you immediately think of a kind of candy, right? I can look at certain colors and think of Peeps or whatever. When I see this color combo, I'm like, conversation hearts. But I wanted to create something that was a little grungy, that looked like grungy candy hearts, because two things that I love, well, candy and grunge. So there you go. So I made myself a Valentine. There you go. That's what I did. So I'll share the technique and how it's done. It's really fun to do. This is utilizing a vignette box, but it could be anything. But as a maker, and any of the makers that do vignettes, you know, the vignette boxes come in a set of 4, and this little guy, he gets used occasionally, but is often not used. But he's a perfect little size for something cute, a cute box. So instead of making the inside, which you could have, I just use it as a little panel because it can just sit somewhere. It can sit on a shelf or a desk, or it was just cute. And then there are those typography letters. Now these, I'm telling you guys, it was just sad that they didn't stick around. There's 73 letters. So there's multiple letters, numbers, shapes, stars. So you can spell a lot of different things. I don't think we've really figured out a book of how many of each thing, but every pack has the same assortment of everything. So I can tell you that. You're not going to get a pack where you don't have multiples of the full alphabet and numbers. But they're just great because they're plastic. Now one side, let me get them out of the muffin tin to show you. The letters, well, I mean, if it's a letter like an R, then you know which way it goes. But you can see that the back of the letter, it's kind of recessed, and that's so you can put some collage medium in there, right? The top is smooth, but like on an O, because it's the same, you know that the smooth is the top, and that little channel, not that you have to fill it, you're not piping and icing, but it does give you a little channel to put glue, because I thought these are really difficult to try to put glue on a flat surface. So if you have a little channel, anyway, that's what these are. They're great. If you can find them, if I was you, they're very cool. I love the dimensionalness of this. I think it's very, very cute. They are plastic, so you can paint them, you can alcohol ink them, you can stamp on them.
Simon has them.
Oh, Simon has them?
Yeah.
Hot dog. Well, I have plenty, or otherwise I'd be waving Mario going, buy those. But really, I knew when they were going away, I'm like, that's okay, I'm not going to stop using them. But yeah, you can even heat emboss these. They are made out of a resin versus a plastic, but just don't overcook them because it's still not a regular substrate. But yeah, They're fun to do. I just like to leave them white because I love the contrast of the background. But yeah, if you wanted to paint or ink them, you can. But it's about this background. It's about how do I make grungy conversation hearts like this.
You really did.
So I'm going to share with you how to do it. Pretty easy. Okay. So first thing, what's that?
Happy Valentine's to yourself.
Oh yeah, happy Valentine's to me. So first you're just going to pick a piece of paper, a substrate. In this case, I used white heavy stock. I'm going to grab a piece over here, okay? Because I wanted something that's a little heavy. You could use watercolor paper. Could it be craft? Yes. But whatever the background color is, that's going to play a role. So if the background is, say, manila or mixed media or yellow, okay? Let me try to grab a piece of that. Right, that's mixed media, which is a little bit more yellow than white. It's going to impact the background. I wanted mine just to be white, even though I was going to grunge it up. But substrate is whatever you want it to be, okay? Then you're going to take a stencil, which I'm pretty sure I left it out, but if not, Mario, can you find that heart stencil for me? I think I could have sworn I left it out, but at this point, it's a disaster over here. Ah, thanks. Okay, this one. I just like the size of the hearts, and I like this, you know, because there's so many different styles of hearts, right? It could be primitive, it could be wonky. I just like this one because this to me is a candy heart, okay? And what I'm going to do is just paste it. Now this is going to get chopped up, so do whatever it is you want to do. You can use sticky grid, you can do all sorts of things. I'm just going to use some masking tape for right now, just because that's what I got. It's going to work. Just put my paper down and this, because this is going to get cut up. Know that, okay? Because if it's going on a box, it needs to be. Whatever you want it to be. Next, we're going to do texture paste. Now, we want it to be matte texture paste. We want something that's going to absorb color versus shine. Could it be grit paste if that's all you had? Yes, but your hearts are definitely going to be grittier. So I'm just using regular distressed texture paste. It is nice. Anybody else love when they get to open a new jar? Like when I finished this make, I was like down to scraping the bottom, which it tends to get a little crustier, but I knew that meant today I get to open a nice fluffy jar of it. It's always fluffy when you open it. So good. Fluffy. Distressed palette knife, angled one. We're going to press and skim. Press, skim, press, skim, press, skim. That's how we need to get the paste on there. And we want to get the paste on these hearts because we need them to be dimensional. So if you just skim over the top, they may not be thick enough, okay? But I also like to have a little bit of texture to them. So you'll notice that when I'm spreading this on, right? Because whatever you skim up is always at the bottom. So you'll see that I apply it flat and then skim that up. So don't keep scooping up more. Believe it or not, there's a lot on a palette knife that you kind of forget. Once it's covered, I just go in different directions because I prefer texture. If you didn't want texture and you wanted to, you know, use the edge of a palette knife or a gift card or whatever to make them smooth, you can totally do that. But I want to make sure that there's definitely texture in there. Okay? Excellent. Then when you're done, you're simply going to lift this up. It's all about the dismount. Take this off. You could put another one in and off you go. When I did this box, I did 2 backgrounds and I used all of it except that. And when I say background, I mean all the small parts of that stencil. So I used 2 of these panels to make that little box. So you would just paste a bunch of these, right? So you have them at the ready. That's what this is. You just paste and go and paste and go. And you can see that texture, it dries exactly how you did it. It's what I love about texture paste. It gives you that nice crisp edge, right? But any marks that you leave, it leaves. I love that. Okay. Then I'm just gonna clean this off. Press and seal, you've seen it. Just take a piece of press and seal, put that on there first, and then put the lid on, because press and seal on any mediums, except for collage medium, I always put that on there just to keep it wet. If you live in a dry climate, can you spray a little bit of water in there before you put the lid on? Yes, but maybe 1 mist tops. So it just depends on how far the jar gets. I don't really recommend using refresher in there. If you get too much resin, like ink refresher, it starts to get really, really bad. Okay, gets a little slimy. So this is just going to go in water. So I'll peel this off, peel off that masking tape. I'll bring in the water just to show you the infamous lasagna pan. It's just a pan. It didn't have lasagna in it. It's just a, I guess, a maker joke. So there you go. Just sits in water. It's just cold water, but you can see that this will dissolve this really quick. So I just throw my stencil in there. If you're doing a lot of palette knives, you can throw that in. If you were doing stuff like collage medium, you can throw that in. So, you know, having a tray that you can put your stuff in, and then at the end, pork pan, there you go. And then at the end, you can go in and clean up all your tools. That's just another making, I'm not gonna say a trick, just a tip. You throw that stuff in when you're doing it. The reason I don't use the press and seal on collage medium is I just found that it was wasting a lot of collage medium. It was just peeling off so much, so that's just me. I saw someone did a question mark on that. Okay, letting this dry. Do you heat this? You don't. If you heat it, they will become puffy and marshmallowy, so maybe that's what you're going for. But I let texture paste dry, so I would sit and just do all those and let them dry. And then we have this. So real quick, can you just
Sure.
just rinse that and then dry it for me real quick?
The stencil?
Because I need it. Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks. Okay, so once this is dry, we're gonna go in and add our color. Let me get this stuff out of the way, get our tools. There you go. See, and it's interesting because sometimes it's just the most basic things work, right? Like that heart stencil. Do I use that heart stencil a lot for backgrounds? No, but having that, hey, that's really good. Okay, so we're gonna do some painting. We're gonna bring in all those wonderful colors, those Valentine-y colors. This one is Kitsch Flamingo because hello. Kitsch Flamingo and Valentine's Day, come on. Dried Marigold, that's a nice little peachy color. Squeezed Lemonade, nice little chiffon-y yellow, right? Not too vivid like mustard seed, not too dirty like scattered straw. Cracked Pistachio because that's just that color, right? Some people say it's minty. It is more pistachio. And then Shaded Lilac. Shaded Lilac is that purple, that perfect conversation art purple. And I'm going to paint with it. So could you put the paint on the craft mat? Yes, but really the media mat is designed with a palette. So use the palette. And there's a reason that I like to use the palette. A couple of things. One, it just allows me to have my colors. But two, have you ever painted on glass? Really, have you painted on glass versus a craft sheet? It changes everything. I'm telling you right now, it just changes everything. So I'm going to go in and just add a couple of drops, just using the flip top. That's what I love about the flip top paint. You can totally control how much paint comes out. 2 little drops is all you need. Shakety shake, flip it open, and you just put it in the squares. So the nice thing about the media mat, the reason I designed it black is because I find working on a black mat very restful to the eyes. It really is. It also makes whatever's on there stand out more. And that was its intent. I know some people, you know, like, oh, he wanted to do it all grungy. It's really because when you see your work, I'm focusing on the work and not all of the space around, but it's easy to identify. But for color, that's why I wanted that area to be white, because to me, ooh, there's a nice little, I would save this. This is a cool little paint embellishment. It was just a crusty paint from the cap. But having this, it just acts almost like a light box, right? By having that white space. Perfect for ink cubes, so it's really sized for any of your ink cubes that you can push down in watercolor, so it could be a watercolor palette. But I'll show you what I mean about painting on glass, okay? So next I'm going to paint this. Going back to my tape, and I'll stick this down, and I'm going to take my stencil, thank you Mario, cleaned it, it's all washed and dried, and I'm going to reposition it right over that dry texture paste. Remember I did the little switch. This is the dry one, okay? Not the wet one. It's dry. The reason I do it this way is because that just saves you from having to go in and mix up a bazillion colors of texture paste, right? Because you could go in with all your colors of texture paste and mix it up, but why do I want to do that when instead I can just go back and use my stencil, okay?
Oh, wow, your little drops are perfect. That reminds me of those candy on the paper that
you
eat up
candy. I did like those, but I would always eat the paper because it would never release quick enough, and I just eat the whole paper. You know, when you rip it off and the paper sticks to it, I just shove it in my mouth. I was like, whatever. Okay, I'm going to just take a flat brush, nothing special. I'm just going to pick up some paint, right? Now, if we use this much paint, right on there, too much paint. Many people would go in and wipe it off on a paper towel. Bye-bye paint. If you work on glass, you can just go in and just get a lot of that paint off, and we still have the ability to essentially dry brush our paint, but then when we need more color, we can pick this up off the glass. It comes off the glass. It doesn't dry on the glass. Not right away anyway. So it's going to give you plenty of time to really control how much paint you're going to apply. And it goes really quick. So when you need more paint, put it down there in that palette area, and you're going to paint these hearts. And you want to paint them fairly solid, okay? This is going to be your color showing through, and if you're going to grunge it, which you know I will, you want to have enough color that the grunge isn't going to overtake. And I just start with a color. I'm not going by any pattern. I'm just kind of picking a row and making sure I do a color in each one. It goes really quick. This to me is very, very therapeutic. You can do this listening to a podcast or watching something on YouTube or TV or whatever, and just do you. Don't try to figure anything out. I mean, I know some people would probably have a template and figure out the colors ahead of time, and that's fine too. But really, again, just the serendipitous of it all is where to me the magic is, and it's going to be grungy. So if you get a little heavy-handed on something, don't freak your freak. It's okay. Okay. Now I'm going to go to another color. So I'm just going to wipe this off right onto the glass. Not going to go into water, and I'm going to pick up the next color. Same thing. Look, because I'm not loaded up with paint, I don't need to go in and clean my brush either. But I want to make sure that I can see that I have a little bit of paint going on there. And I'll show you how we clean off the mat, because you will need to clean it eventually as we go into colors. So again, just picking this up and just fill it in. Just be super haphazard about where your color goes. I'm not doing a pattern where it's like, I mean, you could do a rainbow. That's absolutely. I know a lot of people love to work in a rainbow, so you could easily do rainbow hearts, which would be absolutely charming for this. But you could see how much a little dot of paint works when you're on glass. How much time, like when it's been palette paper or whatever, that you've just continued to load up paint where it just sits on the glass. It is the best. It really is. All right, I'm going to clean this. Now I'm going to go into my yellow, and same thing. I have that whole area, so I'm going to use this area until I can't, and then I'll show you how we clean this up. Okay. Now we'll go into yellow, yellow, do a little yellow. So nice. Isn't it nice, Mario? It's so peaceful. But that's the whole thing of making. Making should be really fun. You could have your favorite tunes going. And these could all be done very kind of almost systematically, in a sense of, yeah, if your intention is to make this, you could sit down and make it from start to finish. If you got the time in your day to literally go down and make this, go for it. But if you don't, you're like, hey, I got a busy week and I really want to do it. Don't say you don't have time to do it. Just do one thing. Like tonight, I've got 15 minutes. I'm going to slap some texture paste on that. Okay, great. Then the next time I'm going to sit down and paint. Then the next time I'm going to, whatever it is, that's what you need to try to remember to do. So clean up, because now I'm going to go into green and purple. I'm just going to use a little bit of water on a paper towel to clean this. I don't want to soak this in water because I don't want my brush to be wet. Okay. You could do this on a dry paper towel, but I just wanted to make sure that that was out. Then taking that same paper towel, now I'm just going to clean up my palette area. Another easy thing about working on glass, that you can just take that damp paper towel and dry, and now you've just cleaned up your palette area. Now we go back in to our other colors. So same thing, working that color in. All right, and just add, it's good. It's good fun. And I know they only have one color left, so kind of keep that in mind when you're going in. Could you go back to one of the colors you did ahead of time? Yes, but don't. And also don't worry about a pattern. This is going to get chopped up. So it is what it is. Just kind of figure out where things are going to go. It's like Plinko hearts, right? As we work down. And I'm really kind of pouncing. That's why I chose more of a flat brush versus a round. I also think when it comes to doing any kind of dry brush, a flat brush is a little bit easier to control versus a round brush. A round brush, to me, it gets a little moppy, but that's it. Okay, then we're going to wipe this off, and we're going to go right into that purple, right? Move that around. And if it looks a little mucky, which to me it looked a little mucky, I'm going to go and see till it doesn't. So if I had a little bit too much green on there, just clean that up. There we go. I still think this looks a little too mucky for my taste. See, there was some green in there. See? When you see that, it just means it's in the bristles, and just that paper towel will take it out. Let's go back. There we are. See? Beauty of a palette. And I can go back and paint over that. I'm just going to give that a minute to dry, and I'll cover that right up. But really simple to do. And this process, again, like what I'm sharing with you, this could be done however you want it to be. Meaning, does it have to be candy hearts? No. This could be grungy, this could be numbers. It's just an idea of how you can create a textured background where your elements are various colors, and just using a stencil over a stencil to do it, using paint, and you're going to see why I use paint in just a minute. All right, we're good. Now we'll throw that brush in the water. I still have all that paint. See? Geez, I probably could have got away with one drip. So they're my hearts. Simple. Okay, move that. Stencil, throw that in the water. Off we go, and we'll clean it up. Nope, we're good. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. So yes, I would have normally just kept going because I would have that next piece in there. But just using, and it could be a cloth, whatever you use, just clean up that area. I want to clean all that off. Then I'm just going to hit it with a little bit of water, because that's what we want. You hear that sound? Before we do what's next, we want to hear that sound. We want squeaky clean, and then we reapply the craft mat. All right, so that, it's just silicone back, so it just lays right into that square. You can work out any of the bubbles, and there we go. So we want this to be dry pretty quick. Nice. Okay. Just want to make sure it's dry. So once the texture base is dry, it is heat stable, meaning you can go in with a heat tool. They're not going to puff up and do anything weird because it's dry, but we want the paint to be dry, and it's dry pretty quick, but that's really nice. And that could be done. I mean, there's so many other ways you can do this. You can now spray this with resist spray and dust it in glitter, right? You can go in with stickles. You can do all sorts of things, but it just looks like you went in and mixed up all sorts of things, and it takes no time at all. It really doesn't. But we're going to grunge it up because, well, that's what I like to do. Okay? So when we're going in, we're going to add some collage medium for this. Now, you have some options. Can you go in with a brush and brush it? Yes, but there is a lot of chunkety bits in here that a paintbrush is just, it's just going to build up. If this bothers you, then please use a brush, okay? But I just want to put some of this on it first, and then I'll go in and do a brush, and you'll see why in just a minute. I just want to make sure that the collage medium is in between the hearts. As long as you wipe this off your fingers while it's wet, it won't build up and cake up. So, all right, I'm good with that. Now I'm just going to wipe this off. All right, take that. See, I just clean off my hands, just a little cloth. Because once you do that, you're fine. Because all I wanted to do is now just go in with that collage brush and just move this around, okay? Because you don't want a lot of gel medium. If you can do all that with a brush, that's fine, but here's what I'm saying. See how it builds up on the top of the hearts? See, like the snow right there? That's not, we don't want that, right? So you just, I found that if I started with a brush and just started putting it on there, that's all I was getting. And I thought, okay, well, if I just, I should close this because I don't need it. If I just put some on with my fingers to make sure that I covered those areas in between the hearts, then I can just use my brush to spread it around. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense to you, but. So now I'm just using the brush in different directions, seeing if I have any built up around the heart areas, and I don't. And I even want to cover the paper, okay? So we want to go over the hearts. All right, there we go. So this is what we have. You can see it's all collage medium, just a nice layer. Oh, I still see a little buildup. You see it right there? Let's go with the brush and knock that down. The reason I don't want buildup is just because it's going to be really hard to dry. Then when you try to do the next step, it's going to always seem like it's wet. We're going to dry this as well. Good deal. What can be used if I don't have collage medium? You'd probably want to try a gel medium. You can try Mod Podge, although Mod Podge gets pretty sticky. Collage medium is just really forgiving with these. So different gel mediums have a different tooth to them, meaning sometimes they'll hold color a little different. But I would try it on a sample before you commit to this and cover it. Meaning when you see why we're using the collage medium, just try it on a piece of scrap paper, what you have. But essentially we're sealing it, but we're also going to use collage medium to glue to wood. So whatever glue you would normally maybe use for wood or anything like that, you could use. Okay, dry to the touch, totally smooth, right? We don't have any, oop, I have a little bit right there. You see it? See that little bit of still sticky? So you missed that one. That's why if you knock those down, it dries super fast. But if you forget, and I'm only telling you because I've done this a few times and I'm like, dang, it's like it's not dry, because I didn't even realize that around every heart was like a halo of glue because I just brushed it on like normal. And then it was just building up around the edges. Okay, that feels better. So now we have a sealed surface. Now it's time to grunge. We're going to grunge it with a distressed crayon in walnut stain. And I'm going to use a distressed blending brush. Now, I have a blending brush. I use these for my inks. This is what I like. But I use this for crayons. I have a dedicated brown brush, right? Slips up to put that in. Walnut stain crayon. Why walnut stain? That's my grunge color of choice. It's a dark brown, kind of chocolatey, but you can do whatever you want. And you're going to carefully apply the crayon, okay? Just like that. We're going to spray a little bit of water on the mat because these are water reactive. So I'm going to just dip the brush in a little bit of water and I'm going to start working this color in. Now, if the color's not moving, so like this, let's just say, I mean, it is moving, but if it wasn't, you could go back in with a little bit more water and we're creating this moppy soup right now, okay, with the crayon. We want to go around the heart. We want to work that in. I know it's freaking people out. They're like, there goes your paint job. Yeah. If we didn't do collage medium, you would be saying that. Okay, so now we have buildup of crayon there. This is where the blending brush is great because I can slide this up and now it compacts the bristles. When this is open, the bristles can fan out, right? That's what I was doing. But when you compact it, it really becomes almost like a stipple brush. So now I can go in and really work those thick areas out. See? You just get rid of them. But I'm not wiping them off because we'll do that in a minute. I just want to move that around into the background. And I'm just holding the edge with my finger. That's what's keeping that in place. And you can move that color around. That's the other kind of great thing. And I don't get rid of all of it. Sometimes I want a little bit of that kind of cool grungy buildup, my grungy Valentine. Okay, and when you're done, slide this all the way forward to cover all the bristles. There's a little bump there where that sticks, bump there, and it's closed. Okay. Now we have this. Take a paper towel again. It could be the same. It could be whatever. All right. Doesn't the heat gun? No, it doesn't hurt this. This is tempered glass. This can handle temperature up to, I don't know, maybe 800 degrees, even more. So no. Nope, you go for it. Okay, damp paper towel. Just damp, not too. You don't want to use a baby wipe for this. It's going to be too wet. And you're just going to start taking stuff off. Okay. So at first, I'm just really light-handed. Now that I see that that's really dirty, just go to another area, and you're just going to start to do the reveal, okay? So because we used collage medium, the collage medium sealed not only the paper that's allowing this crayon to lift off, like we did on that tag. Remember the collage tag we just did? But it also sealed the paint. So that pastel paint color was essentially trapped underneath it. So here's what we've got so far. Now you could stop at any point for this. You really can. Okay, but then I can take a paper towel, put my finger kind of at the end, and this way I can isolate the hearts, and I'll show you what I mean. I'll just do a couple of them just so you can see the difference. See the difference? Now I got a little too heavy-handed, so I'm just going to blend out some of this and reveal a little bit more of that background just to kind of make it work. Could you go back and apply crayon if you just took off too much? Yes. But I'm just going to just lightly go in. Right? If I had smaller fingers, this would be easier, but that's okay. And I'm sure you could use a tool, a brush, something, but all I'm doing is just taking, and you need a clean part of the paper towel to do it, because remember, the crayon is water reactive. So if you just keep working in the same brown area, you're not lifting anything. You're essentially applying a wash of brown over that area. But see how I'm just popping out a couple of hearts here or there? See, watch. Oh, it's brown. That's why it's not doing anything. Okay, watch again. I'm like, here, watch. It does nothing. Watch. See? Pop of color. And if that's not working, then you have to just look at the towel. If it doesn't, If the color's not lifting, it means that your towel is saturated in brown. Anyway, you're just going to go in until you're happy with it. I like that. That's a nice little grungy look. Love that. Okay. So again, if grunge wasn't your thing, you could do this with a white crayon and it would be completely shabby chic. It would give it a totally different look. So you could still do all the same steps. White paper, matte texture paste, do all of your hearts, but instead of doing a brown crayon, do the white crayon. Rub it in. It's going to give it that whole shabby chic Valentine look too. That's what I'm saying. Don't sell yourself short with looking at an aesthetic style, right? Some people are like, oh, he always uses brown. I hate that. Well, I do me, and I love brown. But if you don't shut yourself off from understanding the technique to go, you know what? I like that idea, but I want it to be a little brighter. You know, maybe you're going to use brighter rainbow colors, you know. Vicky Boutin loves color. She would do rainbow hearts, right? Or Diane loves color. You could do whatever works for you. And that overlay, this texture, this wash, doesn't have to be brown. It could be another lighter color, speckled egg, for example, or antique linen. It could be anything. Me, I love a grungy Valentine because, well, that's just cool to me. Okay, then the simplicity of it all. You would just go in and take your structure, whatever that happens to be. You would measure it, right? Or you could just take that, flip it over, trace around it, cut it with scissors. You're just going to essentially cut panels of paper to fit whatever structure it is that you want to do. I'll just show you. I'm not going to go in and do the whole thing because the idea is still the same. But because I know I want the hearts on the top, I could take this, or can you grab my guillotine, please? Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Mario.
You're welcome.
Perfect. Thank you.
Perfect.
Perfect. We can also just take our trimmer, right? Can line this up. I'm going to cut here, put this against that bottom edge, right? So if I'm cutting paper, sometimes I'll cut for the top. If I'm cutting something thick, I'll cut from the bottom because I just get more force, I think, that way. But I can square up that corner. I'm just going to eyeball it for the sake of this demo. I'll be like, okay, it's pretty much at the end of this purple heart, and it's pretty much almost at the top of that. Okay, so let's go in here, go to the end of that purple heart-ish. I'm going to use as flat as I could be. All right, I'm going to line up those hearts. Oh, there was a piece of paper in there. Bonus. Okay, there we go. We have that. Okay, I want the bottom. Great, let's get rid of that layer. Perfect. And I think I want to just cut off a little bit more of these hearts on this side. See how that paste, it just falls off? It's like iguanas, Mario. And just show up. Okay. You get the idea. You would measure it, okay? But here's what we're going to do. Next, we're just going to glue it. So once all your panels are done and they're ready to go, you're going to go back to your collage medium, back to your brush. You're going to brush on your collage medium, stick your panel down, and hold it. And when you're gluing onto wood, because wood is porous, you really want to hold. I'm going to say at least 2 or 3 minutes. If you're too impatient for that, one thing I do is I'll brush the glue on, I'll turn this over, and I'll set something on it. Usually a couple of Sizzix dies or whatever, just to let that sit and I can go and do something else. All right? Very, very simple to go in and just add that. But you want to hold this longer because wood is porous, right? So when you first put collage medium, it starts to soak into the wood and it doesn't grab onto the paper. So if you just do that and let it go, your glue is essentially going to soak in. So you really need that pressure to hold on to it. But what I wanted to share with you is collage medium stronger than glue? It certainly is. There's an entire, it's the strongest glue. In fact, if you don't mind going in the closet on the right-hand side, you're going to see the tag with all the stuff glued on it, just to show you that. So when I'm done gluing, I'm just going to go back and share. Same trick that I did on the wood heart, right? None of my seams match up, right? My paper was cut a little too short. These are handmade boxes. They weren't perfect. So I might have had some gaps here or there. Just like that folded heart, when I'm done gluing, and I only glue the paper, I don't glue over the top of it, right? I'm not creating a collage. I'm gluing on my panel. But any exposed areas, right? Your paper, any of that, you're going to go back with your distress crayon when you're done, and you're going to go in and color those seams. That's what's going to make all of your pieces look fluid. Believe it or not, there's so many gaps in there. See that? How that is cut longer than the front, but you don't notice it because I did a line of crayon, I did a little smudge with my finger, and you're good to go. This is just showing you collage medium with everything. Collage medium glues paper, fabric, plastic, metal, gears, metal to metal. These are 2 pieces of metal stacked, glass. Collage medium glues everything. It is the wonder glue. And not only does it glue, it dries matte and it shrinks when it dries. So wherever you have glue ooze, it shrinks behind the element. So it's my favorite. So then these, once this was all dry and my crayon's done, the finish is figuring out what you want to say. What is going to be your typography? Who knows? But then I'll go back to collage medium. Now this and this, same. Collage medium matte, collage medium matte. This, of course, is used to brush on. This, the detail tip, is what allows me to go right behind every single letter, little alphabet tile, whatever it is that I want to glue, and just apply a little bit of glue to the back. It's going to dry completely smooth. Another tip, if you have anything needle nose like collage medium or glossy accents, give it a good thunk to pull the glue out of that before you cap it, and you're good to go. And once that's on there, give that probably about 15 minutes for that to really set. I'd give it an hour before it's wrappable, if you will, depending on how late you're making it. But how fun is that to make a grungy Valentine? I think the conversation hearts with that brown and using your paints to create such a cool background, even if you weren't doing this, it'd be very cool on a card. Very cool, really fun. So a lot of different ideas, a lot of different things to show for Valentine's Day. I hope that this live inspired you to get out some of the stuff, get out some of your things that you've saved. Maybe it's going to be pieces of chipboard that you glittered. Maybe you want to go back and revisit that tutorial. Maybe you want to just sit and do your charms. Maybe you want to do this. Maybe you want to start cutting up some of those backgrounds that you made, right? A lot of things, or get out those wood slices from Christmas that you've been holding on to that you kind of don't remember why you have or what you did. There's so many different ideas. Even if you want to sit and just make little swatch flowers all day. That's the beauty of creating. I think that's what I like more than anything.